Good morning. Notice of the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing same in the Omaha World Herald and the Nebraska Press Association, OPPD outlets newsletter, OPPD.com, and social media. By displaying such notice on the first level of OPPD administrative offices and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on May 15th, 2026. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection on OPPD.com and in this meeting room. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder to those joining us on WebEx, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You're in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. Our agenda for today's meeting is as follows. We'll conduct a closed session in the morning to discuss two topics: executive compensation discussion and large load growth customer insights. We'll conclude this morning's closed session no later than 9:50 a.m. in order to open the WebEx meeting to allow the public and OPPD staff to join. We'll begin public session at approximately 10 a.m. and receive reports from each committee. Director Spurgeon, do we have a motion to go into closed session?
We do. I move that the board go into closed session at this time. Want to name it for me? Digital?
8:01.
8:01, thank you. 8:01 a.m. to discuss two topics. One, executive compensation discussion, and two, large load growth customer insights. With respect to the executive compensation discussion, a closed session is necessary because the discussion will involve competitive and confidential compensation and retention information, as well as performance evaluation information, and to prevent needless injury to the reputation of the executives as they have not requested a public meeting. With respect to the large load growth customer insights, a closed session is necessary because the discussion will involve competitively sensitive customer information. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Wagner, absent. Director Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Director Core,
Yes.
Director Howard. Yes. Director Hudson,
Yes.
Director Moody,
Yes.
Director Spurgeon,
Yes.
Director Williams is absent.
All right, the motion to go into closed session is passed. This closed session will be limited to two topics: executive compensation discussion and large load growth customer insights. No votes or other board action will be taken. Okay, ready to roll? All right, welcome back. A motion and second is required to reconvene in open session.
So moved.
Second?
Wagner's absent. Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Yes.
Howard. Yes. Hudson. Not here. Moody,
Yes.
Spurgeon.
Yes.
Williams is absent.
All right, thank you. The motion to come out of closed session at 10:01 a.m. is carried. This closed session was limited to discussion regarding two topics: executive compensation discussion and large load growth customer insights. No votes or other board actions were taken. Notice of the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by publicizing same in the Omaha World Herald and the Nebraska Press Association, OPPD outlets newsletter, OPPD.com, and social media. It was done by displaying such notice on the first level of OPPD administrative offices and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on May 15th, 2026. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder to those joining us on WebEx, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You're in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. We'll take public comments in the end of today's meeting, as well at the board meeting on May 21st, 2026, which will be conducted in person at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center and begin at 5 p.m. The public may attend in person or remotely via WebEx by going to OPPD.com. Joining me today in person are my fellow board members, Mike Kavanaugh, Sarah Howard, Craig Moody, Mary Spurgeon. Eric Williams, Amanda Wagner, and John Hudson let me know ahead of time that they would be unable to join. We also have members of our executive leadership team, including our our VP General Counsel, Pete Fisher, Steve Bruckner with the Fraser Stryker Law Firm, and OPPD staff. Additionally, we currently have 12 attendees in this meeting, consisting of OPPD employees, and members of the public. We'll begin with committee reports and a review of board work plan items presented by the following directors. Director Spurgeon will report on governance and on systems management and nuclear oversight. Director Howard on customer and public engagement, and Director Moody on finance. Following the committee reports, we'll move into presentations on financial stewardship, oversight and monitoring, infrastructure investments, and governance and board matters. We'll conclude the day with public comments on items of district business. Josh Clark will now give the safety briefing.
Good morning, everyone. Because safety is our top priority, we'll begin with a few physical, cybersecurity, and psychological safety reminders. For physical security, hopefully if you're not feeling well, you're not here today. You're getting rest, hydration, and seeking out any type of medical assistance as needed. Always know our location's emergency exits. We have a main exit here. We also have exits behind us. In the event of any type of evacuation to the building, I'd asked everyone to go to your nearest exit and then regroup on the north parking lot, where we'll take accountability and make sure everybody's safe. In the event of severe weather, which unfortunately we've had a few these last couple of days, we go immediately out these doors to the security desk and then follow the directions to the shelter in the back of the building. Always remember to keep your area free of any slip, trips, or hazards. Stay alert to changing conditions. Know how to reach 911. I'll take care of 911 for us. If anybody needs any assistance in the room, please come up to me or the security personnel outside, and we'll get you help as quickly as possible. Always remember our cybersecurity awareness. Be cautious with suspicious emails and unknown links. Do not click anything that seems untrustworthy. For those of us in OPPD, we have a nice little handy dandy fish alert button, so be quick to push that for anything unusual. And then during any types of virtual meetings, always identify any unknown numbers that may be showing up in the room. For psychological safety, this is essential for productive collaboration. Please encourage curiosity and continuous learning. Speak and act with respect. Embrace constructive conflict. Value diverse perspectives. Build trust through transparency. And give everyone a voice and invite questions. Always remember OPPD's core values. We have a passion to serve, we honor our community, and we care for one another. And with that, thank you. Have a great meeting.
Thank you, Josh. And we'll start with Director Spurgeon for the first two committee briefings.
Thank you. Governance Pre-Committee met on May 12th for an hour, following our safety briefing and a little review of other action items from the forward meeting. We had a presentation about executive compensation, which the full board took part in this morning during closed session. I was pleased to report that there have been no reports of ethics violations on the part of any member of the board to our new Vice President Wheeler. Then we had a legislative update with Mr. McAravey, which the other half of the board received, I believe, who were on the Customer and Public Engagement Committee. And I think we may have, do we have more of that today? Well, it'll be coming at some point, if not yet. We had a brief comment about the board governance workshop, which has been set for an August date, and how that would be followed up with. And a little look at the planning calendar and the work plan, and there was our hour gone. Any comments by other folks at the meeting that I've missed? Okay, thank you. And let's see, next one is system management and nuclear oversight. Again, the usual item safety briefing and a prior month review of action items. Followed was a very brief reading of the progress made regarding Energy Plaza sale, followed by a really interesting and laudable presentation on utility operations and how OPPD has grown again more in preparing for storms, and what the lessons learned are and what will happen in the future, because we're going to have some. Integrated system plan update was given on the various stages of that. And I'll just mention that the second workshop was presented last week. And for anyone listening, you can sure go to the website, OPPD Community Connect, ISP, and you'll get the information that was shared with the board at that time. Looked at the local electric grid planning regarding resolution 6744 that was discussed and looked at. And then a board work plan, summary of the meeting, and I don't think we had any time for open discussion, as I recall. We're quick. Other members of the systems management, did I miss anything?
Can I just, I'm
Sure.
not on the committee, can I ask a couple questions?
Yes.
The ISP, are we just curious about schedule? Are we on track for a year or how's the schedule shaping up?
Yeah, just a quick characterization. First couple of months have really been gathering inputs, and many people would articulate that as being the most difficult aspect of the process. We are on track. Now we're entering kind of the modeling side of things.
Okay.
And so that'll be the back half of the discussion with the community. Thank you.
We
for the
just
question.
completed a public
Mhm.
workshop, which was a very important one as
Yep.
we're gathering those inputs.
Assumptions, right? Okay, thank you. And then also 6744. We heard that in finance as well, so I'm gonna connect some dots here. I think it's fair to say there's some interest on the part of members of the public about where we're at and what the next steps are, what the schedule is. Could we articulate for them if and when anything might be coming out about next steps, what that's gonna look like?
So you will see this on the, 6744 includes a lot of things. You
Yep.
will hear later today on the, there's a new generation and transmission report. You're gonna hear about the status of the transition of the North Omaha station. With regards to the later part of resolution 6744 on local grid electric planning. I've been lots of meetings. We're meeting with the Douglas County Department of Health, meeting internally, trying to gather as much information as we can about the potential programs that we're contemplating. There will be more interaction with elected officials in the area, I believe, next month or so, again, to gather their input as the board considers the different programs that we want to take on. All of this is leading into the summer timeframe that we need to incorporate that into our 2027 budget to have a plan that kicks out really in full force in 2027. Does that help?
Sure. Yep, thank you.
We are complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Howard.
Thank you. The Customer and Public Engagement Pre-Committee meeting was held on May 11th at 4 p.m. We went over the governance and board policy review for BL 9 and BL 14 and had a good discussion there. We also just skimmed over our SD 11 economic development revision work that is sort of in progress.
Oh,
Yeah, Aaron, sorry, the screen's paused.
It's-
Hey, no worries, thank you. We got a legislative update and an AMI update, and so we will be following up with folks on our progress on SD 11. And we are complete.
Awesome, thank you. Director Moody.
The Finance Committee met on May 8th. Everything that you see on the agenda, we will discuss today, save for item number 8, which we just referred to earlier. So I'm not going to reference anything. We're going to get into it as we go. That's it.
I appreciate it.
Mhm.
All right, Mr. Underwood.
Ms. Langford is here to narrate the first quarter financial report overall. We've had a healthy Q1, which we're thankful and glad to see as a result of a lot of hard work from the folks in the room and the rest of the 2,000 people in the organization. Laura, would you narrate for us?
Morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and start. As Brett said, we have had a year that started off in a good position, and so we're anxious to see the results as we continue to go forward. We did enter the year with a budget that did reflect some of our expense reductions we made last year, so I think that is also helping us as we move throughout the year. So starting on the charts above here on the upper left, we'll start with retail revenue, and so far year to date through the end of March, we were $32 million over budget. That is because of the additional revenue we're having in the industrial category. That's kind of a shift from what we saw last year compared to budget. So we're seeing additional load growth from our industrial customers as well as additional demand. And so not only are we seeing an over budget position there, but we also are seeing a pretty large increase just from an actual year to year perspective as well. Moving down to off-system revenue, we are over budget year-to-date about $37 million. This is primarily from additional congestion hedging revenue that we receive in the SPP marketplace. It's kind of a consistent theme that we've been seeing for the last few years. We also did experience some higher market prices during the month of January with Winter Storm Fern, and so we're seeing those results impact us year-to-date. Shifting over to the right in the middle there, we have fuel and purchase power expense. When you combine that with off-system revenue, that gives us our net power cost. You can see here we are over budget, also around $37 million. That's from higher purchase power expense. Again, we had additional pricing that we saw higher during Winter Storm Fern. We also had some additional volumes we purchased as well. And so when you combine both of those being about $37 million over budget, we are pretty much right on the budget for our net power cost. So that is great to see that this year so far. And then
Can I pause really quick there? Because that is a phenomenal outcome. And part of that is we are subject to market volatility as we're buying power on weeks like Fern. Having all of our generation available and ready to perform with the work that Troy's team does in getting that well maintained and have them ready helped us recover virtually all of those costs. So that's I want to call that out because it doesn't happen by accident. It's a lot of dedication from your team, and it's reflected in the financials.
A lot of prep that goes into that too, getting ahead of it. Whether it's winter or summer, our staff really focuses on getting prepared for seasons, and a phenomenal job.
Thank you. Continuing, we'll finish out the expenses on the upper right. We have other operations and maintenance expenses. We're running under budget here year to date, about $7 million. And that's just due to lower than expected maintenance activity. And then to finish out this page on the bottom, we have other income and other expense. From the other income side on the left, we are over budget about $3 million. This is due to higher renewable energy credit sales than we had planned for in the budget. That was partially offset, though, by some lower investment income as we had unfavorable fair market value activity. And then on the right-hand side is at the bottom is other expense. This is pretty close to budget. We're just about $2 million over budget here, and that's due to additional interest expense with additional long-term debt that we have outstanding. Any questions or any comments on this page? All right, moving to the next page. On the left-hand side, we have operating income and net income. Operating income through the end of March, we are over budget about $53 million. That is again due to the results that I just mentioned, particularly with having that additional revenue being is quite a bit higher than budget. Then we move down to net income. We are still ahead of budget here, about $41 million. But here we're seeing that impact of additional interest expense and then that lower investment income that I mentioned before. And then on the right-hand side, we have our cash balance and capital spending. You can see with cash at the end of March, we were really close to budget, just about $7 million more than what we expected. As we move down to capital spending, you can see there's a fairly significant budget variance there. We're about $103 million under budget, and that is due to some timing delays on project execution. I think a lot of times we're seeing that happen on the generation side with the new expansion that we have going on, but we're also seeing that not just on the generation side, but also on some large transmission and substation projects we have going on. Something the team is closely working with the project managers to forecast out the rest of the year. We are expecting the year to actually end above budget.
Or really quick, and this maybe just part of education or just a reminder. A few years ago, we used to talk a lot about mark to market. And that made a lot of difference in net income and operating income. We really haven't talked that much about that because interest rates really haven't changed that much. But as there's a potential at some point for interest rates to start dropping down, you should expect to see a lot more of that conversation because we will have a lot more mark-to-market differentials as we're holding debt or investments that have a higher interest rate than the current market. You're going to start seeing that net income increase while our operating income doesn't. So it's just a warning that may come at some point where you hear on the news interest rates are dropping, expect the mark-to-market effect to be reflected in.
Yeah, we do hold most of our investments to maturity, so that'll fluctuate our net income, but we likely don't recognize that in the end.
It's, the dropping interest rates are really the thing that drives that. That also feels tenuous at this point, whether or not they're going to drop given some inflationary pressures. So
And that's the Federal Reserve. Really what we're talking about here is how that affects the 3-year, the 5-year, the 10-year. But at some point rates will fluctuate. Just a good reminder that mark to market will likely be a part of our lingo again.
All right, then the last item to cover on this page is in the bottom left, the SD impacts. So starting with SD2, we are meeting that metric as we are 18.7% below the defined region, which is currently in SD2. And that is based on the most recent final EIA information. And then relative to SD3, our debt service coverage at the end of March was at 2.26 times. And so that's against our goal of 2.0. That's good at the end of March. We do expect to be, though, at 2.0 by the end of the year. And then the other part of SD3 to talk about is liquidity, and our days cash on hand at the end of March was at 200 days. And so that's a strong liquidity position for us and is well above the minimum 100 days that we have as our metric as well. So good, strong results there as well. With that, are there any other comments or questions?
I mean, it's a tremendous quarter.
Yes.
53 million over on operating income, $40 million over the income. That's really exceptional performance. Going back to what you described earlier in terms of our ability to navigate a storm puts us in a really strong position. So kudos to everybody for, starting the year off in a really great fashion. I'm not asking for what second quarter will look like necessarily, but we're halfway through. Is there anything that's come up that has sort of sent us askew from the good start that we've had thus far? Knock on wood, no? Yeah. Okay.
No, I think it's part of what you saw from last year and the lessons we learned and implemented in the budget for this year was there's a change in administration. There was in the market about tariffs and growth in the industry that still persists to some extent today, but at a significantly less lower level. And that's why you see the industrial revenue that would have started coming last year, it's now materializing. So it just it comes to show that when our customers are telling us the plans haven't changed, the timing may be changing. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing here that culmination of some of those plans. Our largest industrial customers are still using the power they told us they were going to use, and it's really coming in handy. We are not seeing, I'm looking at Tim, I don't think we're seeing any sign that's going to go away. So okay. If anything, it's stronger than budgeted as of today. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Weather always has an impact, right?
Sure.
Whether it's heating degree, cooling degree, storms. We've been pretty fortunate this year. The storms haven't been too bad. Mm-hmm. And so those things can change things on a dime, as we've seen in the past.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Booty for the retirement fund. Or sorry, Mr. Underwood.
Yeah, great. We have John Petrillos here, manager in our treasury office, to go through the performance of the approximate $1.4 billion in the defined benefit pension.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. For the quarter, the retirement plan balance did decrease to $1.38 billion from a beginning balance of $1.4 billion. During the quarter, benefit payments exceeded contributions by approximately $6 billion, and expenses and the negative return was about $18 million on the plan for the quarter. The asset allocation for the plan does continue to be within the policy ranges. So for the quarter, the plan had a return of negative 1.3%, and that's versus negative 0.6% for the benchmark. We did underperform. The 1-year return on the plan, though, is a rolling 1-year return on the plan is a positive 11.7%. So for the quarter, domestic equity returned a negative 2.7%, and interestingly, value led growth, and small and mid cap led large caps, and that's a change from what we've been hearing for the last maybe several years in that. So domestic equities were a negative 2.1% for the quarter. Fixed income was flat for the quarter, and global fixed income was a negative 0.9%. Yields continue to rise, global yields continue to rise, and that pushes down the value of those particular assets. Real estate return was positive 0.9%, and the the fundamentals in the real estate sector continue to be better than they were in the past. They were office and so forth is starting to stabilize. So those returns are better than they have been. With that, I'd open up for any questions.
I would just say briefly, thanks, John, for the report that you can see we underperformed. And this was a topic of discussion at the end of last year's results. We also underperformed. Jeff Busek, who is our advisor, talked a bit about kind of the oddity of entities that have no earnings. They lose money, that go for IPOs or are in their infancy as a publicly traded corporation, and their stock price is experiencing a majority of the yield without the fundamentals driving the organization that would warrant the rise in stock price. So there's this uncoupling. At the time, we talked about how we're doing an asset liability study. Effectively, you have, as we all know, assets in the defined benefit pension plan, and you have a liability to deliver value to those customers who have earned that over the duration of their career. As we look at the asset liability study, we are looking at active versus passive management. And fundamentally, the active versus passive management in some part is driving the underperformance. And so I just want to remind you that that work is underway. We see that we underperformed. We're not happy with that. And the analysis to figure out potential changes that we need to make is currently underway. And we'll have more on that, probably not in July, probably in August. And we'll work that through the finance committee and go from there.
Just to summarize, we have an active management that's based on fundamentals, as you were saying. And what you're saying on the market is that that doesn't always reflect that fundamental. So it's less rational.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. That's, I'm not a person who watches the ticker tape every day or tunes in every day. And sometimes you just have to trust that you have made good investments with the entities for a reason. And for us to go by a quarter or a 2 quarters, I mean, okay, keep an eye on it. But anything going on in the world that could have affected that's outside of an investor's control, I think patience and as long as we are comfortable and we know that the investments are with good companies, good entities, you just go, okay, gonna go up and down. It's gonna go up and down. It's gonna go up and down, and let it ride through. Because if they are solid companies and not, I don't know, some entity in somebody's imagination that has gone out and said, buy me, and there's nothing behind it, we'll be okay. So I appreciate the ongoing vigilance because that's important to do. And you always learn more when you do that kind of investigation. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll keep it with you for the update to service regulations.
Okay, thank you for your patience with finance subjects. We've got Ms. Hoyle here, our Director of Financial Planning and Analysis. Periodically, we ask the board to consider changes within our service regulations and schedules. This is the governing document on how we are to provide service to the customer and the expectations of the customer. We have 2 subjects that we're presenting for discussion today, and Ms. Hoyle can walk us through those.
So some of the board might remember back in 2019 and 2020, we did a revamp or an update to the service regulations, but it was only really updates to the language, the format, and the structure, so more aesthetic changes. We made it easier for customers to understand. The intent of the document at that time was not changed. So for the most part, the service regulations have been the same for many years. And sometimes we find that language isn't as strong or as clear as it needs to be. And so that's what we're going to be going through today. We have 2 main topics that we'll be discussing: access to OPPD equipment, and then the resale redistribution of electric service. And so we'll start with the access to OPPD equipment. The overview is reliable and unobstructed access to meters is fundamental to accurate billing, maintenance of activities, and system reliability overall. Our current service regulations touch base on a couple items around OPPD equipment, including that the customer needs to allow space for our equipment, keep that equipment free from obstacles. Customers are responsible for tree trimming if those trees interfere with OPPD equipment, and that tampering OPPD equipment is not allowed. But it doesn't specifically state that we need access to OPPD equipment and that it is the customer's responsibility to grant OPPD access. The revisions touch multiple sections within the conditions of service, including the easements, right of access, customer responsibilities, and procedures for failure to provide access. Other sections that are updated are the location of meters, the billing section, and a change to Rider 470 that I'll go through as well. Next slide. For the conditions of service, we updated the easements and legal authority section, and then we added the right of access, customer responsibility for access, and failure to provide access sections. The updates reinforce OPPD's easement and right of way authority and clearly outline the customer responsibilities to maintain safe, unobstructed access. The language also clarifies what actions OPPD may take, including potential service impacts, imposition of an access charge, or both, if access is not provided. Next slide. The metering section previously stated that meters must be located on the exterior of new and rewired construction, and that OPPD may grant exceptions. There are meters, OPPD meters inside or located inside or behind locked gates or fences. And so a location of meters has been added to specify that meters may be placed outside, inside, or behind barriers, provided OPPD has safe and reliable access. In the billing section, the revisions clarify property owner responsibilities during tenant transitions. Owners are responsible for electric usage from the moment they acquire a property unless a tenant is actively billed. We're also formalizing the process for an interim service and enabling owners to request automatic disconnects between tenants, which supports accurate billing and operational efficiency. And then for Rider 470M, the updates revise the meter reading charge, and we're updating it to the monthly meter reading and access charge. The charge would remain $50 for customers who have inaccessible meters if they deny access or if they choose a non-communicating meter. This is a last resort option to obtaining access. OPPD will reach out to customers by email, phone call, in person to try to set up appointments to gain access before this charge is imposed. And this better reflects the ongoing operational burden and encourages customers to maintain accessible metering.
Before we go on, can we have a quick discussion on this? Could you we had a lengthy conversation in the finance committee, some of which I think is relevant for us to have a full board understanding of. Could you help remind us what sort of the legal backing is to the requirements that we have access to the equipment today? Is that something that's unique to OPPD? Is that common? Is there a state law that backs us up? Is it common for broader utilities?
There is not. If your question is there an explicit statute that states customers must at all time provide access to the utility? The answer is no.
Okay.
But I think your question is broader than that. And certainly OPPD and other utilities have been given full authority to adopt service regulations that govern the terms and conditions of service for utility service. One of those common across the country is that you must provide access for the utility to read meters and conduct its business. That's in exchange for the utility obviously providing electricity on demand for that premises, right? So there's very clear legal authority for that, for those terms and conditions. In our case, as a public power utility, it is this board, the board of directors, that determines what those terms and conditions of service are, the service regulations. In an investor-owned world, where Mr. Fisher recently came from, the utility would have to go to the commission, Public Service Commission, to obtain the same kind of terms.
Okay. Thank you. We've been doing some AI swap out for a pilot, which requires we're going onto people's property, onto commercial, residential, what have you, Could you kind of characterize how that's been going and the extent to which that's helping to inform the service regulation changes that were?
Here, if you like me to-
Yep.
So with the AMI switch outs, we've been going to every single meter, but we've been doing the soft launch, of course. We're seeing about a 3 to 4% access issue rate.
Okay.
Generally, those are locked gates, barriers to things like that. There is some intentional nature behind that. The majority of them is not. So if we have about 12,500 meters that we've installed, we're seeing like 300 to 400-ish in that range. We're down to like a dozen or less where we have meaningful challenges behind getting access.
Okay.
That's the kind of nature of the AMI deployment that we're under. So we're trying to get this done through a very thoughtful manner. We do a lot of communication, a lot of work with the customer on site. Sometimes that doesn't always result in us having access.
Right, and okay, thank you. And then in terms of failure to provide access, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's, I think it was the committee's understanding that like a single failure one time does not result in a fee that's coming, soon thereafter. There are multiple steps that our team is taking to get access. You mentioned emails, phone calls, like whatever it's going to be. There's a lot. Could you kind of characterize what that looks like for us?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work that happens there at the customer's home. We'll follow up if we have to with phone calls, emails, letters. There's an escalation path there, but generally it is multiple attempts, multiple consultations about the need for the access and what the meter can provide before we would ever step to any kind of fee.
Which is why, to point to, we don't need to go back to the slide, but under the failure to provide access section, and I'm going to give Director Howard credit on this, continued failure to provide access. That continued failure is really an important piece of the language in that particular bullet. So thank you. That's what I was looking for. I appreciate it.
All right, the second update addresses resale and redistribution of electric service. The intent is to maintain fairness, ensure customers are billed correctly, and prevent unauthorized reselling of energy based on metered usage, and ensure that electricity is delivered and billed in accordance with established utility standards. Next slide. The updated language clarifies that property owners may not bill tenants based on metered usage. An owner that meters individual tenants and bills them for kWh is effectively acting as a retail electric supplier, which is not permitted under Nebraska law. If an owner wants to redistribute electricity, it must be incorporated as a fixed charge included in rent and not on a kWh basis. This replaces the previous standard, which simply required that tenants not be charged more in total than the owner's OPPD bill. So just clarifying that language. We have provided the full red line of the service regulations that includes all of these changes, and so I'll open it up for questions or comments.
I'm going to ask a similar question that Craig asked, Director Moody asked a few minutes ago to Mr. Bruckner. So this one has a different linkage to statute. There is clear direction in statute for these. Can you comment on that, Steve?
Sir, yes. State law prohibits the sale of electricity to any end-use customer by anyone who doesn't have, who is not a public power utility that has a certified service territory. And that's crystal clear in the law. This is a bit of a belt and suspenders approach to make sure that OPPD service regulations restate that. Everyone else does it. All the other public power utilities have similar provisions. And frankly, it's common across the utility world that there are regulations on the resale of electricity by non-utilities for fairly obvious reasons. Utilities need a franchise an exclusive franchise to sell in a particular area, and allowing the resale would simply disrupt that model. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Well, my comment is that I thought you did a great job of clarifying the language and making it easier for somebody who doesn't read this all the time to go, oh, well, then I should do this. Okay. And then I'll do that and it'll all be well. So really appreciate the clarity of that.
And I think maybe to that end, thank you for that comment. one of the things that the finance committee had a really good conversation about was, are these standard? Let's kind of clarify the language, bring us up to sort of level playing field for what we're seeing other utilities do. Or is it something more that warrants public comment, a 30-day public comment period, right? If we're adjusting rates or fees or some of those kinds of things, and it's perhaps a newish sort of thing, we typically take 30 days and let the public weigh in. I think our view as a committee was, this feels fairly straightforward, fairly run of the mill. It's getting us in alignment with state law or other kind of standard practices. So our mentality after discussion, where we landed was, this feels straightforward enough for us to move it forward and vote on it on Thursday. So again, good discussion to get us there. I think I do want to characterize that we did really have a solid conversation about ensuring that when we do things that are material, that we want to be transparent and give the public an opportunity to weigh in. But this one just kind of didn't meet that, I'll admit, semi-ambiguous criteria. It was a good conversation.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
All right, Mr. Underwood.
Thank you, sir. SD3, we've got Mr. Thurber to come up. This is the board's voice to management in terms of how you all want us to ensure that the district has access to sufficient liquidity. And the way we do that is we intentionally maintain the credit quality of the organization. And so John's our Director of Treasury Operations, and he's going to walk us through about 5 or 6 slides from a monitoring perspective. John, I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Brad. Again, I'm John Thurber. I'm our Director of Treasury and Financial Operations for OPPD, and we'll discuss SD3, which is access to credit markets. So with that, and again, I'll just mention it's very critical. We're in a huge program of adding new generation, how important it is to have strong access to credit markets, because it directly impacts our ability to have low cost debt issuance to support the new generation programs that we have. So with that, to achieve a low cost and flexible cost structure, OPPD shall maintain financial ratios and targets to ensure efficient and cost effective access to credit markets. So therefore, we will, and as you're aware, we will maintain 2 times total debt service coverage in the determination of our rates. That's part of our corporate operating plan process. And the board is very aware of that one metric. But we also have other metrics that we look at. And in making resource decisions, we also consider minimum risk adjusted liquidity levels. We also look at debt to capitalization levels. And we also look at where we are competitively, the financial risks that we're taking, and the financial flexibility that we have. And the goal is to maintain a AA rating, which is one of the very strongest credit ratings that utilities can have. So with that, next slide, please. As you can see, and this is, I would tell you, this is the most important metric that we look at, and this is how we set our rates. We do have a goal to maintain 2.0 times coverage. You'll note in 2024, we were slightly below that. If you remember, that was a challenging year for the district. We had some outages, we had additional purchase power costs, and revenue that was under budget. I would say that the most critical piece for that was our recovery in 2025 and the ability that we did to manage our costs, the programs we put in place in 2025, so that we didn't have another year where we were below 2 times debt service coverage. This is something the rating agencies look at very critically, and our recovery last year and continued recovery in 2026 is very important. So we do have that, and we do maintain that, and our plan is to continue to have a minimum of 2 times debt service coverage going forward. Next slide, please. Also, what I would say is probably the second
most critical metric that the rating agencies look at is how much liquidity we have to pay our operating expenses. Each day we spend about $3.5 million. So today we're spending $3.5 million. Tomorrow we're spending that. And so it's very critical that we have cash levels in place so that we're not under pressure if for whatever reason we have a small downturn in revenues. That cash level provides a buffer for us to support our expenses going forward. And to be a AA rated utility, the rating agencies would like to see us to be between about 150 and 270 days cash. And you can see with the chart, excluding the lines of credit, we do fall very comfortably in the AA rated utility zone. When you add our cash, when you add our lines of credit on top of that, you can see that we're well above that. And both rating agencies in the most recent credit report commented about us being above 300 days cash on hand when you include our additional liquidity from our lines of credit. So again, it's very critical for us to maintain this level of cash cushion to cover unexpected expenses that could occur or downturns in revenue that happen. And so we have done that, and our plan is to continue to be at these very strong cash levels.
Joe, can you remind us quickly how do you manage these cash vis-a-vis borrowing, timing of borrowing, and what these does for the district in terms of saving interest expense?
Yes, traditionally, when we do borrowings, it replenishes our cash level. So we typically spend our cash on ongoing construction, and then we replenish that cash when we do borrowings. And we monitor this. We don't ever want to get below 150 days of cash. That is the triggering event that kind of triggers the debt issuance. And we'll talk a little bit about it. We just got done pricing a bond issue last Thursday. We'll get the cash in June. And one of the triggering events was we were getting close to 150 days of cash on hand. That doesn't include the additional lines of credit, but that was kind of the triggering event. And then we use that money that we're going to be getting to replenish the cash that we have been spending on capital construction starting in June. So again, that's how we manage this process, is really looking at the debt issuance timing and making sure that we maintain at a very minimum 150 days, which is the lowest level of our AA rated peer group. So next slide, please. And I would say the third metric we look at, and you can see that we are above that, is that metric we call the debt ratio, or debt to capitalization ratio. That essentially is the amount of debt that we have outstanding and the equity or net position. When you add our debt and net position and you divide our debt by that amount, that gives us the debt ratio. AA rated utilities have traditionally tried to be in the 50 to 60% level. I would say, though, that when you look at the additional generation needs that most large utilities are going through, most utilities are seeing their debt to capitalization ratio increase. When you look at the LPPC community of utilities, most of them are seeing it increase, and it wouldn't surprise me that the rating agencies adjust this level to reflect the ongoing capital needs that strong utilities need just to meet additional generation. So we are above that level. And I would say one of the reasons we are above that level is when we did decide to close down Fort Calhoun Station back in 2016, that decision caused us to write off the assets at Fort Calhoun, and that caused a decline in our equity. So our debt to capitalization ratio was affected. We were effectively 50-50 debt to capitalization prior to that. That one decision pushes up closer to 60-40. And you've seen that with the recent capital that we've been spending on the new generation projects, that has continued to creep up. And we are monitoring that, and we're really trying to keep that level within the 60 to 70% range, or at least as close as possible to that. So with that, the end result is the district has maintained a AA rating. We just got ratings reports from the most recent bond issue a few weeks ago. We're a AA, 2 AA from Moody's and S&P. There's only a handful of utilities that are that highly rated. And both rating agencies have indicated that we are in a stable situation as far as our debt rating goes, which again is a very great report card on the utility. It's really kind of the look at the entire utility and how the utility is doing. And both Moody's and S&Ps have commented about how good the utility is being managed and how well we're handling our capital program going forward. So with that, I would ask that, and I don't want to speak for the finance committee, but I would ask that the board find that we are in compliance with SD3 access to credit markets.
Thank you, John. I'll take it from here. I'll just remind colleagues that I believe it was last month, we approved the district to issue another $1.4 billion in debt. So these credit ratings are vital for us to maintain. And as I think is demonstrated in the report, the team is doing a wonderful job of maintaining a really solid financial foundation for us. So the committee was pretty happy with the report and was aligned on the recommendation to find us sufficiently compliant.
Can I just?
Director Spurgeon, yes.
The debt ratio, so by understanding what you said, utilities, all utilities are pushing the ceiling on this to the extent that the rating agencies may adjust to reality and say, okay, move that approved band higher.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You bet.
One of the things that help us and help other utilities is we are issuing debt to build infrastructure. So that increases our net position, our net assets. There are assets that are going to be here for years or decades, generating benefit for the district. Eventually that, as we pay them off, as the depreciation goes forward, we start accumulating what in a private company you would call equity. For us, it's a net position. How much of the company is truly owned by our customer owners? All of it, right? But that we don't own. And I think that what this ratio is doing is make sure that as you're issuing debt, that you're not issuing too much debt on things that don't add value to the company. And in our case, our equity position, our net position has been increasing significantly. So, which is delivering that value to the customer owners and to the region.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's do quick reflection. So creating space for other reflections on what's been accomplished, challenges, strategic implications. Any questions about the strategic directive? Be valuable right now. I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
I just want to affirm that the metrics that we're tracking are the right ones, given the evolution, given everything going on. I'm just looking at the actual narrative of the strategic directive. We've got 2 times debt service coverage and then maintain a AA credit rating. Those still feel pretty solid to me, but I wanted to ask you the question if are those still right? Any need to adjust them up or down or bring in any other metrics that might make sense? I'm catching you cold. You didn't know I was asking this question.
Oh, this is my life, so that's okay. I appreciate you including me in the process as you often do. Most of the 3 metrics are cascaded from the agencies. So in that regard, we're pretty aligned with how we're measured as far as credit markets goes. I might take a rain check and the next item, we have another metric maybe that I might
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
you all to reconsider, but
Yeah.
in this space, we seem like we're in.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if you've got any other reflections that you want to offer here.
I want to remind everyone, this is a tool. Ultimately, we exist to serve our customer owners, but without financial help, it would be really hard for us to access, first of all, having access to capital markets, regardless of the interest rate, that would be a hard thing to do. And then borrowing at low interest rates is incredibly important. And we're issuing 30-year debt. So it's very, very important for us to achieve and lock in the lowest interest rates to benefit today's customer owners, but to benefit those who will be here in 2060. However, it is a tool, and it's a tool that has helped us significantly. SD3 instructs us to stay at the AA rating. That band has AA1, AA2, AA3, or AA plus, AA, AA minus. We sit right in the middle of those. And that's that, as Mr. Underwood said, it's a comfortable position. It's one that we put at the front of the budget planning process. We have to hit those. As we are building and as we're constructing and as that construction and inflation starts increasing rates, it's an active conversation that we need to have. At some point, do you deploy that financial help so that we can build what we need to build faster? Do we lower the 2 times debt service coverage? Well, that's going to cost more interest in the long term, and it's going to take a long time to get back to. But there has to be something in exchange we can get. If at some point that debt to capitalization ratio has to increase, I think we would have a conversation with the board and led by our CFO to say, what are we getting in exchange for that? So there's really no magic of staying at that AA2 rating. It's something that we plan for, that we deploy when necessary. So it's just a good reminder that it's something that we keep healthy, and it's worked really well for us. And it's a tool that we have in the future if we choose to use that. So that's my reflection.
Thank you. I'm good.
Good. Awesome. Thank you. All right. In keeping with tradition, Mr. Underwood.
Yeah, SD2 rates, we've got a conversation. Oh, I'm sorry, AMI, excuse me. Wrong line, my fault.
That's all right.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, Chair.
Switching.
We've got a little conversation on outreach and the AMI meter pilot. So
Thank you. Aaron's not here today. Usually he would be here as my, kind of partner up on a lot of these updates. But I did want to acknowledge another person who's in the room today is Mike Iwansky. Mike has been leading a lot of the vendor relationship on our meter deployment. So he's in the room today. I wanted to call him out as someone who's been helping lead through a lot of this stuff. So just want to give a little kudos to him while I have the stage here.
Matt, can you remind of your title and?
Matt Hardebeck, Director of Customer Experience. Let me get into it. So there's 3 different topics that I'm going to cover today. I'm going to talk about some early results of the AMI soft launch, kind of what we're seeing. I'm going to get into the AMI customer and stakeholder outreach that we did. Remember, that's a very long and very integrated process that we went through. There's some lessons learned. So I want to share those today. And then I want to finish with some key metrics. So I think it's really healthy for us to continue to monitor and measure things along the way. So jumping right into the soft launch measurements, I'm going to skip the first 2 and go down to the third one, that total truck roll, up to almost 1,800. That's pretty impressive, right? Those are direct savings, right, to the utility where we don't have to roll a truck. That has time and cost savings, absolutely. But there's also a customer benefit here, right? Usually customers have to wait some sort of delay to execute the action that they want to do, either in a move in, move out, or in a turn on, turn off. Doing it remotely through AMI does have value as well to the customer. It expedites that action that they're trying to achieve, while also being a benefit to OPPD in terms of truck roll savings and time savings, which that is a really, really good advantage of AMI. The fourth item down, about 9,000 or so outages. Don't think of those as like, that's every single sustained outage. That could be a momentary at a substation that caused a slight flip. That may not be a sustained outage for a customer, but still something that's notated and collected on the AMI side. It's helpful data for us operationally. So really, really great point. And then the last one is 99.7% of the time, we're hearing from those meters every day, every month. That's really good. Now you would say, why isn't that 100%? I would look at it and maybe say the same thing. Early on, we didn't expect it to perform as high as we are seeing it. That's merely about there's some anomalies that happen within the communication networks, and we don't have a full deployment of the whole system. So you would expect to see slightly lower, but that does not impact billing. That does not impact reliability. There's nothing that happens in that space. We still catch those reads, still do those billings. This is a good point to stop and say, all of this has kind of strategic connection to excellence and executing. So I wanted to make sure that like there's a connection here. Organizationally, we're trying to execute on very large things seamlessly and thoughtfully. This is kind of acknowledgement through numbers of that. Okay, we can go on to the next slide. Some lessons learned. Okay, so I'm going to skip over the first one because I'm actually going to talk about that on the next slide. But some of the stuff that we heard from customers, we are a learning organization. We want to go out and understand. Customers want a tighter window. I mean, obviously, everybody probably has had a notification of some kind of delivery on their phone today. Customers want to know when we're going to be there and when we're going to swap out that meter. So we heard that loud and clear from customers on some feedbacks. And then we're trying to adopt that in our next deployment. So when we go to full deployment, we're going to try to introduce an automated call within a shorter window that has a better sleeve against those customers. I'm going to skip over the meter exchange because we covered some of that. A lot of that's more internal processes, and go down to the business side. There was direct feedback from the business customers that they didn't see as much value in the 90-day communications. As you recall, we did a 90-day, a 60-day, and a 30-day communications. All of those in different channels to make sure customers were aware of their responsibilities, aware of the value of AMI, and what was about to happen. Business customers didn't see as much value in the 90-day, which is excellent. That's what we want to learn. So we're actually going to remove that from our full deployment. And then lastly, internally, we had some data issues, and that showed up in some customers being communicated to who we thought were in the soft launch, and they weren't. We had some errors in data. We've since corrected those. Okay, moving on to the next one. Okay, I'm going to skip around again. I'm going to highlight a couple different things. The strategic connection here is, as an organization, we've been driving towards better digital customer experiences. So you're going to see that kind of come through here. So the second item down, 64% of our customers have my OPPD. That's really good. A lot of our peers wouldn't say that. They would probably be more in the 40 to 50% range. And we're actually up 3% since last September when we launched my OPPD. So we're watching very meaningfully, and we have targets internally about what we would like to see in the growth of that product. But it's something that we're watching very closely. In the post install customer satisfaction, again, really high on the customer side, 4 out of 5 almost, a little bit lower on the commercial side. So again, a little bit of difference between customer in the business class and in the commercial class. Some of that is, some of those outages are more impactful to the business, as you can imagine, more than it may be for a residential customer. The digital campaign, I guess to me, that's an acknowledgement of the strong brand that we have. A click-through rate, as someone who maybe is not in that space, 3.6% is really pretty good. Normally, you would see it quite a bit lower, and that speaks to customers trust the content that we're putting out there, and they're clicking further in that to learn more. So again, that's a good acknowledgement of a digital campaign, of a digital brand that's really coming to life. I had kind of previously acknowledged this on the community engagement piece. The last bullet there, the 54% learn through letters. So if you recall from last fall, we did in-person outreach where we had events. We went in the metro area and then also in our rural environments. We kind of staggered our way through that. In the metro area where we started, we saw lower engagement. And towards the latter half of those open houses, we switched to actually sending physical letters, and that drove the attendance up. So though you see 54% of that 150, a lot of that is skewed towards the latter half. That's again how we've learned and changed through the process, made adjustments, and then got better awareness out there. I'm going to go to the very last one. Again, safety incidents of 0 with all of those meters deployed. That is so incredibly important, not only for our staff, our vendors, but also for our customers. So that's really, really important to end on that safety note. Slide. Lastly, Aaron and I just wanted to acknowledge that you'll be seeing and hearing again from us in the August and November timeframe. We're going to come back with a little bit about what you and other customers and key stakeholders should expect out of full deployment, what that journey is going to look like for customers, key stakeholders, what kind of awareness, materials. So we'll be back to talk about that as well later this year. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments you have. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, now we're on to SD2.
Ms. Hoyle again. We've had an ongoing conversation in Finance Committee that Director Moody alluded to earlier, and I'd like to talk about the metric that we're using within SD2.
All right, so today we are proposing a revision to Strategic Directive 2 rates. During the past few months at the Finance Committee, we focused the conversation around the region and the target. Currently, SD2 states we're pursuing a directional rate target of 10% below the average published rates of 7 states in the North Central region. And those 7 states are Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Dakota. The directional target is a benchmark against the states around us to see if our rates are in line and if our rate increases are within the same range as other utilities. This shows us, is OPPD an outlier? Should our increases be more based on our percent below? Should they be less because we're coming in higher than states around us? And are we keeping an eye on the national level? And are we also following that line? So today we're going to go through the data that brought us to the proposal to return back to the West North Central region, mainly focusing on the 2 states that were added in 2022, which were Illinois and Indiana, and the 2 states that were removed, which were Minnesota and North Dakota, and compare them to OPPD. We're going to specifically look at generation mix, ownership type, share of electricity usage, and drivers of the rate increases. This slide shows the 3 revisions to SD2 since 2015. The directive has been adjusted as our rate strategy and as the energy landscape have changed. The original directive had a rate target of 20% below the West North Central region. We strengthened our focus on affordability in 2017. And we removed encourage demand reduction and energy efficiency. We also added the language around entering into the 5-year no general rate increase. We then removed the no general rate increase provision in 2021. And then in 2022, after about 18 months of research and discussion, we shifted our regional benchmark to the North Central region and changed the percent below to 10%. And based on the information we're going to go through today, we believe another refinement is appropriate and return back to comparing against the West North Central region. This slide provides a census-based regional definition, which really formed the basis of the EIA groupings and are widely used beyond EIA. When you research the differences between the West North Central and the East North Central regions, you find the following characteristics. The West North Central region is largely rural. They have lower population density, higher share of wind, and seasonal fuels. Conversely, the East North Central region is more industrial, they're densely populated, and consumes more electricity overall. The differences of these 2 regions underline why selecting the correct comparison region significantly influences how we define competitive as well as how competitive we are. The next section compares how these regions differ and why the West North Central region provides a more stable and representative benchmark. Starting off with total retail sales. One of the biggest limitations of the current North Central region, which is on the left, is that Illinois in gold and Indiana in yellow make up over half of the region's retail sales. So OPPD's competitiveness is driven by what is happening in Illinois and Indiana because they have such a large share of the total retail sales. By contrast, the West North Central region includes Minnesota and North Dakota. Retail sales is a little more evenly distributed amongst the 7 states. It's not a perfectly balanced region, but it is a more balanced region. Minnesota is the 2nd largest percentage of retail sales, and North Dakota is towards the lower end, and therefore a better measure of really OPPD's performance. This slide highlights another key factor, which is transmission organizations. We have regional transmission organizations, RTOs, and independent system operators, ISOs. Illinois and Indiana are part of MISO and PJM. And PJM is an RTO like the Southwest Power Pool. However, PJM operates a capacity market to ensure future reliability, and SPP relies on resource adequacy requirements. So in SPP, OPPD experiences planning reserve margin increases where PJM holds capacity auctions, and the PJM capacity markets have recently created significant volatility. In July of 2024, PJM held its capacity auction to secure supply for June 2025 through May of 26. The auction cleared at $270 per megawatt day in most parts of PJM, and that is a tenfold increase from the previous auction, which had cleared at $29 per megawatt day. For 2026 to 2027, it cleared at $329 per megawatt day. And for 27 to 28, it will increase again. And this is going to cause large rate increases that we haven't yet seen in our SD2 monitoring report, since it is a lagging metric. If we continue to include Illinois and Indiana, with them being 50% of the retail sales and those states experiencing large increases due to the capacity markets, OPPD is going to continue to gain competitiveness. And that made us ask the question, is this providing the right signal around our rate increases when those increases are due to large differences in just how the RTOs operate? In contrast, the West North Central region aligns more closely with OPPD's position in SPP and MISO adjacent areas, really resulting in more predictable and similar cost environments. All right, there's a lot on the slides. We'll just kind of go through it line by line, comparing Illinois, Indiana, Minnesota, and North Dakota. The first line is what we just talked about with the grid operations. Again, Illinois and Indiana are in MISO and PJM, while Minnesota and North Dakota are MISO and SPP. The next line is the class average price in cents per kWh from 2021 to 2025. So in 2020, so between 21 and 25, OPPD cents per kWh increased 5.2% from 9.04 cents to 9.49 cents per kWh. In contrast, Illinois went from 10.14 cents per kWh in 2021 up to 13.68 cents in 2025, which is a 35% increase in their cents per kWh. The next line is the top two generation types for each state. You can see OPPD and North Dakota are very similar, with coal around 50% and wind around 35%. Illinois' main generation comes from nuclear at 53%, and Minnesota is natural gas and wind at about 25% each. Earlier, I mentioned one of the characteristics around the West North Central region is a higher share of wind generation, and that shows here with wind generation being in the top two generation types within the states within SPP. And then for main ownership types, there's the political subdivision, which is public power or nonprofit. Retail choice is a deregulated market. Investor owned or privately owned and for profit, and cooperatives are private, but they are nonprofit and owned by the customers. So more similar to public power than IOUs. Illinois is 57% retail choice, which again is that deregulated market. Indiana is 77% investor owned. And North Dakota is 72% cooperative, which again is more like public power than the IOUs. So OPPD is more similar to North Dakota than Illinois and Indiana for grid operations, generation mix, and also ownership types. Next slide. So this chart highlights OPPD's position relative to the national average, which is in green, the North Central region, which is in orange, and the West North Central region in blue over the last 10 years. What stands out is that the North Central and West North Central regions were pretty even until 2021. And then we gained competitiveness in the North Central region beginning in 2022 on. What this really shows is the reason why we wanted to start this discussion around the region and the percent below. 2025 preliminary numbers show OPPD coming in at 20.8% below the North Central region, which is up 2.1% from 2024. And that was with a 6.3% rate increase in 2025. And what we would have expected is, based on the rate increases in Nebraska and our surrounding areas, is that slight decrease in 2025, like what is showing in the West North Central region. When we compare the West North Central region, our competitiveness narrows, meaning the benchmark becomes more challenging. So when the West North Central region, using the West North Central region really forces OPPD to maintain discipline in managing future rate increases. Next slide. So in summary, returning to the West North Central region really provides a more appropriate structural comparison, especially given our shared RTO environment, a more consistent and gradual rate profile, reducing distortions introduced by outlier states, stronger accountability because the gap between our current rates and the 10% target is smaller, meaning we must be more disciplined in future rate actions. And this revision really strengthens the directive and reinforces OPPD's commitment to affordability. Next slide. Here we just show the changes, the red line of the changes, adding back in West in the directional target and keeping it at 10% below. This is removing Illinois and Indiana and adding back in Minnesota and North Dakota. And then next slide, just as far as next steps, option 1 is to proceed with a board resolution and vote in June of 26, following the 30-day public comment period, or if we continue to committee deliberation, or if the board or public requests additional analysis or modifications. And I'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Beth. Aaron, could we back up a couple slides to the line graph real quick, if that's okay? So board members, as a reminder, really what the recommendation before us consists of today and the finance committee is comfortable with bringing to you is adjusting who we're comparing to, right? So losing Indiana, losing Illinois, and adding in Minnesota and adding in North Dakota, but keeping the target the same. So in other words, 10% below that peer set. I come back to this because it helped me to think about this in terms of the lines, right? What we were comparing to previously or currently is that orange line, 20.8%. So we're well below what our target is as it compares to them. By making this adjustment, it's going to be harder for us to meet that target, is really what that's telling me. So the committee did have some really good discussion around not only the peer set, and I think we reached quick alignment there, but around is 10% right? It's 15% better. And I think maybe this is the time to kick it over to perhaps the two of you, but I think we then ask the question, what signal is this sending, right? This is the board's voice. This is the board saying, this is what's important. This is what we want you to achieve. But it's, to me, important that the interpretation of what we're saying is clear so that we're all aligned. So I think this still, maybe the next slide then. Sorry, Aaron. That last bullet, a more challenging metric sends a clear signal that OPPD will attempt to limit future rate increase to meet its strategic directive, acknowledging that we've already signaled we're going to raise rates. So I think this puts us in a position where, again, I think good, healthy tension exists between rate increases are coming and a directive that says, let's keep those tight, is really what my interpretation of this is. I don't know if you've got any comments on that.
Yeah, maybe share a few perspectives, and then Javier might have some thoughts too. I'd love to hear, but I would just say the profile of the blue and the green is symmetrical. And I think that was one of the biggest findings for me. If you go back a slide, Ms. Lane, where historically that blue and green pre-2021 has also had a symmetrical profile. When we changed the metric, we got into asymmetry. It's not necessarily wrong. It's just the first thing that catches our eye. If I go back to the last couple of years' rate increases, they have not experienced unanimous support. And I think that acknowledges, this line acknowledges that, where we were getting more and more competitive year over year with the orange, but the rate increases were not easy, nor should they be. And so for me, I think this restores us to a more comparable population set. I think it does put a little more pressure on us. And at the same time, we also get the benefit that we're a couple of percentage points better than the new metric. So it doesn't stop the rate increases, but it says, we really want you to be more blue than orange. And I think as I reflect on the rate increase conversations the last few years, that was what I personally was hearing was, we're concerned about rate increases. We want to invest in the system. And so taking those into both the 10% and then the cluster comparison group, I think that's what drove our conviction on what might be a better SD.
So from my perspective, regardless of these lines, the way we build budgets, the way we're always looking and thinking about our customer owners, it's the same. These lines, what these lines and the comparisons allow us to do is say, hey, how competitive are we? Make sure that the board has a tool that you can use to evaluate whether or not we're living to that expectation of low rates. It's really interesting if you see the graph. Those two lines, the orange and the blue, were virtually on top of each other until 2021. And there's a big separation of those two, and they continue to separate more. That, I'm going to describe it as the realization in the country that we have a capacity problem. How the different markets and RTOs responded to that makes all the difference in the world. What you see here is how SPP has approached this issue, which is through a planned reserve margin. It has allowed a lot more stability. It doesn't mean that we have it easier than our counterparties in Pennsylvania, or in this case, Chicago or Indiana. The challenge is equally hard. We are taking a smoother trajectory because we have a planned reserve margin approach that basically incentivizes utilities to build generation, not just to go out and start buying generation through a capacity auction, which is the case of PJM. And you can see a little bit of MISO. It gives us a competitive advantage today. I love the fact that we're basically raising the bar, and it's making it harder for us to meet the 10%. But it also, we cannot ignore the fact that we are 21% below Indiana and Illinois, and that we're 30% below the national average. In some cases, we're 40 or 50% below states like California or Florida. So we're significantly more competitive. That's one of the reasons why we have so much interest from companies moving into our region. But what I would say is that upward pressure that you're seeing in other regions, in other RTOs, it's no different than ours. Our rates collectively in the SPP footprint are still going to have that upward trajectory. From an economic perspective, an economist perspective, I believe that the way our markets are constructed, it's going to have a smoother trajectory and less volatile than PJM and MISO, but time will tell. So that's a very long-winded explanation, but I appreciate staff and board working on these and basically raising the bar, because at the end of the day, we have 415,000 meters that they really don't care how competitive we are compared to Hawaii. They care about how expensive their bill is today than it was last year. And so these also holds us to that standard to try to keep our rates as low as possible while still making the investments that the organization needs to keep Nebraska vibrant and growing.
So two things. One is gratitude to you and the team for all of the work on this. This is really, I appreciated the way in which this was brought to the finance committee and it kind of built on itself. So that the educational learning that we had was really nice. So thank you. We could go forward 2 slides. There are questions up at the top that I think are important. So especially those that are not on the finance committee, now is a good opportunity for you to ask questions, pontificate, share your thoughts. Ultimately, I'll cut to the chase. Ultimately, we're at a fork in the road where we either say, let's send this to the public 30 days and then for eventual assumed approval in June, or it comes back to the finance committee for additional work. So that's the fork that we're at. This is normal standard procedure for us. Again, non-finance committee members would love to have you weigh in here, see what you think.
Well, I do have a comment to start. First of all, the state comparisons were really valuable. And I like the little walk through history that you gave us, because I remember being on the committee when we said not 20%, 10% is more appropriate, that level. And the states that were chosen at that time were based on weather. And now weather is less of an issue and finance is more of an issue, is how I see that. So I think you make very good arguments for, going to taking out Indiana and Illinois and putting in North Dakota and Minnesota for those reasons. I guess I have a question of should we try to be this competitive? I don't know that we need benchmarking from other states for anything but pride of OPPD, because it's clear that this board of directors does not like to raise rates, and that we had to undergo a year of austerity in which some directors were alarmed at how and concerned at the cuts that took place throughout the company, in order for us to feel comfortable for a little 6.3% rate raise that was required. So that's a question that I have. The other thing, that here's OPPD, we're like what, a little more than 1/4 of Nebraska maybe that we're, and we have just a huge amount of demand here. What was it? I forget the years, 24, 25. Douglas County was the largest, highest in growth in the state, not in the state, in the United States. I mean, that's not nothing. And Sarpy County is like trying to catch up, racing along behind. So my question is, North Dakota, is there somewhere that they're experiencing that kind of growth? South Dakota, maybe Minnesota is, I don't know much about them. But in some ways, we are a tangerine trying to be compared with the oranges in that new array of states. So that's one thing that I have a question about. And I'll tell you the other one that is not in this rates policy. And I keep thinking about it. In fact, I was so sure it was in there. I read this the other night and went, oh, doggone, that's not in there anywhere. When we had a big rates workshop at one of the August board workshops, brought a very good presenter in to explain to us how that worked and rates nationally. The thing I took away from that and have not forgotten is that utilities want to avoid rate shock. And rate shock occurs when you move into double-digit rate increases. So I wonder if that should not be something that should be put into a revision of this SD. Because I think that's what we should commit to, however it wants to be expressed, but that we will avoid rate shock. I'm thinking back to discussions of the 2026 corporate operating plan, and I'm listening to members of staff who said, we really need to build X and we really need to build Y in order for us to continue to be a strong company. And those are not minor builds. I don't know. When we replace a facility, I don't know if does that come under capital, or is that ongoing? I don't know where that is in the budget. We have to be able to let this utility, so much as being demanded of, we have to keep up with that. We're very well aware of concerns about what is a quarter of our residential people who could qualify for assistance plans and paying their bill. Well, there's 3/4 of them who are doing fine, and we have existing infrastructure or companies and manufacturing plants. What happens when something goes awry with one of our major facilities, which is not generation, it's something else, and their energy supply is interrupted? Are they going to politely knock on our doors and say, hey, did you notice? And will our defense, oh, yeah, our stuff's kind of old. Yeah. How could we foresee this coming? Well, we have foreseen it coming. And, gee, woe betide, you know, the board of directors who said, yeah, we did know that, but we didn't want to raise your rates because we know people don't like to have their rates raised. I'm just saying, you know, tarring and feathering is not going to come from the poorest quarter of our residential customers. But oh my goodness, think about those people who were already serving, who are expanding their facilities. And if we have an interruption that hits their business like something could, we might want to think about that. I really, and so, you know, should we stay with 10%? Should we stay? I mean, if you think that this utility needs a big, you know, quit because we just raise rates all the time, okay, go ahead and do this. But I think it might be handier and maybe more reassuring for all our customers, and particularly for our residential people who have the hardest time, and maybe small commercial as well, to just say, we commit to not having any double-digit increases in our rates. We have to spread it out more over years, but we're not going to do that. We're going to let you have be better able to cope. So I guess looking at anyway, those are my questions and comments. So I'll stop there.
I'm trying to pick apart your questions and make sure we're responsive to them. I think the main, like the thing that's most salient in my head is this idea of gradualism, right? The avoiding the double digit rate increases. We have, somebody help me here. We did a lot of work on rates. We built some principles, right? And that gradualism is one of those principles. And now help me remember how that shows up in our work as a board. I'm thinking from a governance standpoint, if that's not named in the SD, where does that show up? So that, like, that's a principle that we held very tightly to and was really important, but I'm trying to think about the mechanics of it.
Not hearing anything else. Gradualism is in rate makers' DNA. It is not stated here. And so I am becoming aware of that reality. I took a hiatus from finance and I wonder if maybe it was struck at some point. But is a very fair, it is how the culture of our rate making works. It's not stated here.
Yeah. Well, sure. I need to understand, again, help me with where that principle exists today, because it's not the only one. And so if that's when we're going to name as a potential for pulling in, great, support it because it adds clarity to the intent. But that would then leave other rate making principles that the board had named a couple of years ago. Like I beg the question, well, should we pull all of them in? So I guess I'm trying to connect some dots here in our governance framework a little bit.
My understanding, gradualism has not been SD2. I think it did come up during the board workshops when we started the rate design project in 2022. And it was, we can go back and look at those results to see where that ended up. To Brad's point, it is in rate making's DNA. You know, when we talk to Sonam and we're going through the cost of service, you know, we talk about gradualism. So it is a little why it's not in SD2.
I'll just add this. Gradualism is one of multiple generally accepted rate making principles. OPPD has always and currently follows cost of service rate making. Those principles are part of cost of service rate making. I think it'd be maybe possible, but very difficult, I think, to incorporate into our governance policies all of the rate making principles that best group would follow in recommending rate designs and rate increases, rate schedules and the like to this board for adoption. I think it's, from my vantage point, I think it's sufficient that the board applies consistently generally accepted rate making principles. It's a great question. You know, should we be more specific? Because then you have your menu laid out for you. But I fear that it might limit your flexibility at different times in a way that's difficult to foresee.
Okay.
Every time the board, I shouldn't say every time that I remember, whenever the board has established a new rate, about the community solar rate or the Force 261 and or other rates, the concept of gradualism comes into play. When the board approved last year the declining block rate, gradualism was part of the discussion, right? That is where the gradualism comes into play, at least historically it's coming here. This strategic directive is a rearview mirror, and it's not a very timely one because of the way we calculate this. We have to wait a year and a half or 2 years for the Energy Information Authority to release that information. So this is looking back 2 years ago, how did we do? Including gradualism here, I mean, I think it's part of the principle, but it wouldn't necessarily do much as we're looking back, how gradual were we 2 years ago? So I think the way we're doing it today is we're establishing new rates, and having that as a principle, establishing new rates is a great way of doing it. It wouldn't hurt putting it in here, but I would say it wouldn't necessarily influence the way we're doing things any differently.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of how we're looking back and comparing ourselves to other states.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Other thoughts?
Broadly or on that question specifically?
Both.
For reference, we've talked about gradualism and it's something we refer to often. Is there a place where that term comes from? Anybody want to cite the source?
I believe gradualism is in Bond-Bright's rate making principle.
It's in other, and in other rate manuals as well. It's been a principle forever.
We've got a few folks that. That's not a trick question, just making sure that we're clear that there are sufficient documents in the past, and there was a workshop in 2019, Craig, I think you and I attended, with the Regulatory Assistance Project that also referenced gradualism as one of those principles. So there are sufficient other locations where this is clarified. We are all familiar with it, but people listening or watching may not be, but this is, as you said, generally accepted practices. Yeah. And from the standard manual that is regularly referenced. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification there. I guess, so are we anticipating that a change here would be reflected in the next monitoring report, which I believe is due in June?
Yeah, next one, no. So the next month, we talked about this from a sequential standpoint. The monitoring report that we'll do in June is going to be reflective of the last 12 months. So if we make a change, it would be at its fastest, would be effective vote in June for effect for the next 12-month period thereafter. So next monitoring report will still be reflective of the current SD as it stands.
Got it, thanks. And then I guess second question that we've often asked about policy changes, why would we not want to do this? Is that discussed in the Finance Committee? This is a list of reasons why we think this is appropriate. Were there reasons presented either by staff or questions mentioned from directors of the Finance Committee about why we think that maintaining the current policy or not making the change would be preferable?
Yeah, other Finance Committee members help me here. I don't know that we asked.
Maybe a little discussion on
In that way.
consistency a little bit, I suppose, changing horses, if you will.
Yeah.
Not looking as good. But
Yeah, that was the
Right.
other thing, is that we might not look as good if we switch regions.
Sure, going
I
from
kind of
18%
like this
below.
change, yeah, just because I think it's a little more accurate for what, for our region. I think it's a little more accurate to take us away from Illinois.
it adds credibility because it doesn't make us look as good, but we're still looking to make the change. So that's commendable, right? As opposed to going the other direction, you know?
Great. Again, not a trick question, just making sure that as we talk through things like this.
This isn't real controversial, I don't think.
If we, I agree also that I think it is probably an appropriate policy update. But just making sure that we've considered both sides of it rather than just a single-sided presentation of here's all the pluses without recognizing there might be drawbacks, including our competitiveness numbers in the monitoring reports and other places will not be as significant as was shown in the graph in the past.
Well, and to that a little bit, it's some of its direction to staff. That data will still be there, right? So these guys do a great job of reflecting the data across the nation as well as other regions. So I echoing your comments, I really appreciate this being brought forward.
Okay, looking at you, Eric, you got questions?
I guess not specific to this, but broadly about rates and kind of all of our discussions. I think we've heard a lot from the public about growth and what is driving the growth and the rates across our rate classes. And I guess that's an area where I would still like to see some improvement. This is just one single metric. And so do we anticipate that this would be reflected in our competitiveness for each of the rate classes that we have? Or is this just a single metric overall? Because I think SD2, the last bullet point talks about a total cost. Is that the number that we anticipate this being reflected for this change? Or is it the graphs that we usually see residential, commercial, industrial?
We would still show it at the class level
By class.
and the retail average, class average. Yep.
Great.
Ultimately, the metric is de-aggregated though, right? But to Brad's point, and I believe that's going to be, if you're interested, tell me if I'm wrong, I think that was in the appendix in the finance committee deck. So if you want to dig in, they're there as well.
Sounds good.
Yep. Okay, I think what I'm hearing is let's kickstart the 30-day public comment period on this, unless anybody has really strong aversions to that. I want to acknowledge that two of our colleagues are not on the finance committee and are not here, so I will touch base with them directly to see what questions they have. But yeah,
Please. It may not be 30 days exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, 30-ish.
Approximately 30 days until the next. I haven't counted the dates.
Yeah. Yeah, so the board then the finance committee will get a sense for what public comments are coming in. We'll take a look at those in the next finance committee meeting, and then we will make a determination as to whether or not to bring it back to full board for, okay, we good? Do we hear anything that's going to send us off course? And then we'll adjust from there. So it's the same process we always go through. Okay, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Bai.
Yes, we have Tim Mullen here. Here's our Senior Director of Nuclear Decommissioning Project, and he's here to give you an update. And as always, the team is performing exceptionally well, and very proud of them and the work they're doing in that space. So I'll turn it over to Tim for the update.
Thanks, Troy. We'll slide right in with the first slide here. And these pictures are about as much of what you don't see as what you do see. The one on the right is in the containment area, so where the plant was itself, and then the one on the left is where the waste processing structure, waste shipping facility was. All those structures are down, all that material's been removed, the site's been restored to grade, which means there's no demolition work left. So huge milestone for us to achieve.
Can you comment, the picture on the right, if you see all the way in the back, that's our spent fuel.
It is indeed.
You're gonna talk about that, but the power plant was here. That's the containment area. You're referring to this.
Yep. It is just all gone.
Maybe remind folks, if you remember off the top of your head, like how many pounds of things that you pulled out of that site.
Yeah, so all told, we've shipped off a little over 300 million pounds of radiological waste. And there was some clean material that was recycled or disposed of as well. I don't have a pounds for that, but the 300 million pounds of radiological material that was safely disposed of, mostly in Utah and some of it in Texas. Next slide, please. So on our finishing strong path to get us to substantial completion, those two middle ones, the remove shipping facility and restore the sites to grade, we just talked about it as those being complete since I was here last. That just leaves completion of the radiological surveys to get to substantial completion, which is what that picture is showing you. A group of folks out in the fields to the south of the plant doing surveys, collecting samples, making sure that that area meets all the requirements for release. That is still on track for the third quarter of this year. The things that I would say remain as risks to achieving that are, one, the weather. We can't be out working outside during storms. And this last couple of days is a great example. When it rains 2-3 inches in a couple of days, that makes a lot of areas inaccessible for us to go work in until it dries back up. But that's number one. Number two is the people. While there are a few OPPD individuals on these teams, most of these individuals are contractors from far and wide. And as they see the end of this project coming to very soon close, they will start looking for other opportunities as well. So should they choose to leave before we would like them to, that's going to impact some of our capabilities on a schedule standpoint as well. But as of now, I believe that we will complete this work by the end of the third quarter. And that puts us on track to also have all the survey paperwork submitted to the NRC by the end of this year. And all of that on budget. That kind of wraps it up for the decommissioning part. So the next slide makes a little change to the other part of our mission, which is the safe, secure storage of used nuclear fuel. For those that haven't seen it before, or as a refresher, that picture on the bottom is where the used fuel is stored. Each one of those concrete modules has a stainless steel canister inside, as you see in that graphic there. And it was 20 years ago this year that we moved our first fuel into dry storage. And so now we're doing our initial inspection. It's called an aging management inspection. And it's happening this week. So that graphic at the top, the yellow line sort of illustrates how that work is done. The canisters stay inside the horizontal modules. The robot is sent in through a air vent. It moves in underneath the canister itself, uses an articulating arm to set up a inspection crawler onto the canister itself that uses cameras and sensors to make sure that nothing is happening with the stainless steel material. And while it's the first inspection at Fort Calhoun Station, other plants had moved fuel to dry storage before we did. So there's been numerous inspections done across the industry and very good results, regardless of which system is used. But our system, I know there's been at least a dozen or so inspections already done across the industry with positive results. And we are using the original equipment manufacturer to do that inspection. So they have all the operating experience and lessons learned from doing those inspections at other sites as well. With a little good fortune, that work will be wrapped up today. We did the concrete yesterday, and today we're working on the canister. But
Can you explain quickly? You explained this to me a while ago, and I found it helpful. The canister itself, that's what contains the radiation. And in our case, the way we design those canisters, there's really no meaningful radiation if you stand next to it. We take extra precaution, but the concrete is to protect the canister from flying objects.
yeah, I'll maybe make just a slight adjustment to what you said, but you're on general track. The concrete does provide reinforcement for the canister. So that's really phase one of the defense. The canister itself can withstand all sorts of things happening to it as well. You can go out and you Google canister tests and see a train running a canister into a wall through fire. So the canister itself will be fine as well, but the concrete provides some additional physical protection. The concrete also provides additional radiological protection because concrete is a shielding material. So right next to the canister itself, you would see higher doses of radiation, which is one of the reasons we leave those canisters in storage module and we don't send a person in there. We just send a monitor in there. But you can stand right next to the outside of those concrete facilities and have no concerns about dose whatsoever. So it is a multi-phased or multi-step approach to protection both from the physical and the radiological consequences.
Thanks.
How frequently are these inspections needed?
So the first inspection is done after 20 years. Currently, the inspections are on a 5-year recurring basis after this. That's set by the NRC, and that is under review based on all of the OE that's been gathered around the industry. But for now, it's 5 years. Williams, you have a question?
So it sounded like you were inspecting one canister. Is it at 20 years for each canister? It's not a batch of, we go and look at all of them and then 5 years later, all of them again. It's each one at the timeline. So we'll be doing one this year, one in 3 months, one in 6 months.
Great question to help clarify that. It is a singular canister and it's selected based on various inputs, where it's located physically, the type of material that was put into it, when it was moved there. So it's the worst case canister, and that's the one we will inspect.
And it's always going to be an inspection of the same canister?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm curious how that.
You want to talk a little bit about the monitoring equipment you have that's around this facility that FSC uses?
Yeah, we sure can. One of the advantages of being in dry storage is that it's a passively cooled system. So I talked about that robot going in through an air vent. Simply the air moving in at the bottom and out through the top helps keep these canisters cool. So all we would be required to do is to make sure that those vents are clear every day. But what we all have also chosen to install is temperature monitoring. So we can see the exact temperature of the air exiting each one of these horizontal storage modules. And that gets logged by our staff a few times a day, I believe, to make sure that none of them are indicating an abnormal temperature. Like, think if you had a giant blizzard and you blocked all your vents, you would be able to see that both physically by the cameras and people going out inspecting it, but you could see if there was a temperature rise on your detectors. Then you would go out and clear the vents and remove that hazard. From a radiological standpoint, our individuals, radiological protection individuals, do surveys of this area on a recurring basis to make sure that it is safe to stand at the outside of the module. But it is a completely passive system, so there's not much that really can go wrong with this. Yes.
Just a curiosity on the previous slide, finishing strong. So is that OPPD land? Is that reseeded grass or?
That is OPPD land. It's that is a soybean field out there, and that we lease that out to a local farmer.
But you're looking for radiological traces in the neighboring field or that was used for farming.
That's correct. Our entire 660 acre site, if we take a few acres, we do surveys across to ensure that it's all meets all the requirements for release prior to doing so.
Thank you.
Pending no further questions, that is the end of my report.
Tim, thank you so much. I know it's been a labor of love and many years we're not done yet.
Not done yet.
But you're saying goodbye to some employees, you're saying goodbye to some contractors, you're shaking hands, and I want to make sure that you pass on at least my gratitude to all the men and women who have stuck with us, made sure that this project is completed. It's just, again, rarely do we hear on budget, on time, and nuclear on the same sentence, and you have made sure that those things have stayed for years and years and years. Now it's the 10th anniversary this year of that decision the board made. So please pass that along to all of your colleagues.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
We have an update on all the wonderful projects that we have going on right now, and we'll start off with Danny Belt, who's our Senior Director of Major Projects, and he stayed pretty busy recently, right?
Yeah, very busy. Good morning, everybody. Danny Belt, Senior Director of Major Projects. As Troy just said, I'm honored today to be able to give us a quarterly update on the progress we're making on all the generation and transmission work we got going on for the district. So, Ms. Lane, you want to jump to the first slide there? The first project we're going to be talking about is the Turtle Creek Station, Turtle Creek 3, Unit 3 being added there at that station. Overall progress is going very well. One thing that I mention about every time I come up here and present on these things is, you know, we submit these slides a few weeks prior to the meetings, and so many milestones happen, you know, just in that short a period of time. Site doesn't hardly look like those couple of photos that were just taken a few weeks ago. You're starting to see a whole lot more happening around that turbine area. So the turbine is that little white covered device right in the center of that center picture. In this picture, it's sitting on the gantry crane getting moved into position, and since then it has been placed, set, as well as the generator component that's going to interconnect to that. All that alignment is complete. We're starting to see compressor building, and you see the skeleton of that up on the upper left. But the rest of the air compressor building has been complete, along with a lot of modules and skids located around kind of that turbine deck area. Overall, we're checking off a lot of milestones around the site, finishing up our last of our major foundations. We only have really one major foundation left, and that's the generator step-up transformer, which is just kind of on the close end, the left end of that middle photo. Once that gets complete, we'll be completely out of the ground with major foundations. Obviously, a lot of lingering smaller miscellaneous foundations that'll be complete over time as we complete different aspects of the work, such as the tank farm and that sort of thing. Water treatment building, fuel oil building, all of those are in assembly right now. Really the next major activity coming up out of the ground, a lot of the stack sections are gonna start going up vertically. We'll also see some of the tank work starting around June timeframe is our expected timeframe for that. So we're gonna see the site coming up out of the ground vertically. By way of update, this slide indicates a 33% complete overall for the project. We're probably nearing 37% complete in the couple of weeks that has progressed since we first updated this slide. We got about 95 craft on site and about 133,000 man hours worth of activity on site to get us to this point in time. So overall, things are going very well. A lot of things that, little things here and there, disruptions to what would be a normal work cadence. Mechanical issues. We got some small quality issues on some delivered parts that we're mitigating on site, typical for this type of construction. So progress overall going well. You do see the yellow bubble on that budget area. And so the one thing we wanted to call out is we do have a budget increase on this project, mostly due to tariffs and variable transportation pricing arrangements that we have with the turbine delivery. So those couple of elements, as long as the tariffs are still in place, are a risk to these projects. And in this case, it was a risk realized as all the turbine parts have now been delivered and are on site. And so we're paying through those customs and duties on the project. So any questions on that?
Can I ask a question that's here? So sure. I can't possibly follow all of the tariff on, off, that kind of stuff, but my recollection is that some of them were found to be illegal and the government is paying somehow, like, I don't know if there's a website, but potentially paying back the tariffs that they've collected. And is there any potential for us to make up some ground on the budget from that standpoint?
Absolutely. Those types of things are under consistent evaluation by our supply chain team. So anything that we're doing on the project level, any of these types of tariff submittals, we're actually routing it all through our supply chain team to validate what types of tariff coding that they're applying to these parts, challenging where appropriate. We have seen a few advantages, particularly in the GSU area, where some of those tariffs, like you mentioned, were contested, and we worked out a mutual arrangement with the vendor to have those tariffs removed from invoicing. So we're having some slight success in that. Right now, I think the progress on the turbine won't necessarily show any value to the type of negotiation you're talking about, but we have seen it on other product lines. Thank you. Okay.
And I know you kind of hit this, but I'll just highlight it a little bit. Kiewit, Burns and Mac, and OPPD are working together exceptionally well on this project. And it's interesting to see the three hold each other accountable. The communication's been fantastic. I sat in on meetings where they're getting ahead of risks and talking about strategies to deal with risks. Some of it was shipping related, some of it equipment, but it's a tough project in this day and age. But the team that we have working together is pretty solid. And I've heard from both Burns and Mac and Kiewit that they really like working with OPPD. They like the collaborative nature and the fact that we listen when they bring up concerns, and we make our own adjustments, and not all owners do that. So very positive from that standpoint, but that relationship has just been excellent.
Very well stated, Troy. It's hard to add on any more substance to those comments. I think that's exactly the case. I think kudos to OPPD for decision making that we've had over time in selecting these types of vendors, using unique approaches, really challenging status quo and routine processes to try to find improvements on the way we execute this work. We do have the advantage of a lot of lessons learned from a previous project of Power with Purpose, and being able to apply those in real time on almost every aspect of sourcing and construction and execution and commissioning has been a huge benefit for us for sure. Great suppliers that understand this market very well, able to react to a lot of the risks that we're seeing because of their experience in industry. So yeah, great partners with us on this project.
Yesterday, I spent time with CEOs of the largest public power companies in the country. And one of the topics we talked about was the difficulty in sourcing labor. Just, companies are putting out RFPs for new generation, much like we did a few years ago. And they're having trouble, really hard trouble just getting companies to even respond, to pick up the phone, let alone bringing them onboarding them and executing. So I want to commend the team for the work they're doing. It's the next time we go out, it's going to be harder, right? Because everyone is building. But the fact that that Kiewit continues to work and they're able to source labor on their subcontractors and things are on schedule, to me, it's something that I cannot ignore.
Yeah.
All of these men and women who are working at the plant, they have many other offers, many other opportunities to go to other power plants, and ours continues to be done in a good manner. So it's great.
And your safety culture, that you gave those numbers of all the people that are working there all the time, and that's really fine.
That is an excellent segue as we move into the Cass County site. So maybe the biggest key win and the first thing I was going to lead with on at least the Cass County update is the fact that they have successfully completed 1 year of construction on site without a reportable safety incident, right? So that's huge, a huge amount of work, looking at close to 300 craft that we have on site right now, 240,000 worth of man hours on site in the craft space in that first year of activity, and to have 0 recordables is a great safety culture. It's the way we start every meeting of every day, multiple times a day. The types of craft that are dedicated just in the safety space on site with Fort Kiewit has really shown what good looks like in the world of contractor safety. A lot of data. One of the interesting stats, kind of as we're reaching certain milestones with these projects, is that the amount of data that a company like Kiewit keeps on their project progress and all the different stages, they're able to assimilate a lot of that data and be able to look for indicative trends. We're actually at one of those crossroads on the Turtle Creek project more specifically, but on both really, where we're starting to transition from underground activities to overhead activities. And when you put like schedule pressure and a few other requirements in there, you're starting to see them slipping into, let's say, another tier of safety risk, and for them to double down and triple down on the type of safety activities that are taking place on site, where they're going to double down in certain areas, human machine interface, and a few other areas. So the data and the trending and their experience in industry is yet again helping us out in how to appropriately work with a contractor of this type around safety. So great call out. Cass County, just to keep us rolling here, again, going very well. I think of the 2 projects, this one's been the most challenged from the labor front. They've got a lot more piping for a very high demand resource. And I've talked to this in front of the board here a few times about this. The labor, particularly pipe fitter type skill sets, are being scooped up by a lot of our data center type customers. There's just a huge demand in industry. And so what we're seeing is a very competitive space for those types of skill sets. It's been a little bit of a struggle to staff up at the speed and to the volumes that they're looking for on this project. It has created a little bit of a ripple in the schedule that's causing some delays in the way that our piping is taking place. Overall, the Kiewit team has responded by bringing in additional skill sets. So taking steam fitters, for example, and subcontracted welders to help supplement what would be a traditional pipe fitter environment. That type of activity is also taking place at night. So we started a night shift as of April 20th. And what that's allowing us to do is all the welding and things that are taking place on the piping during the day, they can do some testing and proof out of the systems at night, so that when they start the next day, they have a step ahead. So right now, in the couple of weeks we've been working this additional night shift, it hasn't necessarily yielded significant results, but we're still building up steam, hoping that trend starts to adjust. And until then, Kiewit's continuing to staff up and making sure that they can move from 3 to 4 to 5 crews at night and be able to keep them effective. So those are a couple of things that we're monitoring on site. That's, I kind of talked about that pipe fitter activity and what it does to drive some of our dual fuel conversion work as being kind of the source of that yellow designation on the schedule. So until we start seeing some pretty good improvement on the overall piping schedule, we're going to feel a little bit of a potential risk there for us completing our dual fuel conversion of units 1 and 2 by the end of this year. I think the one thing to highlight, you know, OPPD is a family, and it's been a great asset to us for projects like this. That night shift, when it started, we obviously have resources that are fully booked on work all through the day. So trying to find additional resources to support night shift has always been a little bit of a challenge for us. In this case, we're tapping into our retiree network, finding a lot of folks that, you know, maybe had worked for Fort Calhoun and retired in recent years, got them coming back, helping us at night, and been a great resource for us, and glad to have them. Ms. Lane, we can jump to the next one. Real quick update, a lot of transmission work, as we've often talked about, 400 miles over the next 10 years. We're starting to see that number start to creep up with some of the more recent activities taking place in our resource planning team, making sure that we're really accounting for some of the long-term trends, and so that I might be able to present some bigger numbers at some point in the near future, higher than 400. What you see on screen on that map on the right, really all those little purple boxes are showing at different transmission projects that are taking place this year. That amounts to about 90 miles of that 400 miles that we're going to be trying to accomplish over the next decade. So overall, a couple of projects that are in construction: the Castor-Sarpy transmission line, the North Douglas County transmission line, all things trending well. That one picture that's shown on the screen is a very interesting drone shot of the river crossing structures as they're being assembled. I think I've highlighted it in the past. It's about a 350-foot tall structure, got 110-foot deep foundations, the biggest that we have in our service territory by far. You'll see some other statistics and some other videos and stuff coming out about that, but a very interesting fabrication and construction activity to span the 1,200 feet or 2,500 feet, I think, of the Platte River in that space. So overall, everything's going well. A lot of other projects that you see on screen that are called out in those bubbles are really happening in the routing phase. So we see a couple of these projects that are moving from the route study area down to a route network area. Well, a lot of activity. You're going to see at least 12 different meetings this year for us engaging with our stakeholders for all these projects, trying to get feedback and get the types of information we need to continue our final route design for these projects. So overall, our transmission substation work's going very well. If we want to jump to the next slide. I've been sharing a little bit of a risk slide every update, just because it is that type of environment where it needs to be out in front of us. Some of the key things that I'm going to highlight yet again: outage management is a super big issue for us. The amount of activities that are taking place in a much more resource constrained environment with a lot of competing outages, those types of things are continuing to be a challenge for us, or they're going to be a challenge for us as we get a little bit further along. Teams are working very closely. We're adding additional scheduling resources towards this coordinated interface between generation assets and transmission assets, for example, to make sure that one doesn't impact the other. Global instability, another one, and the kind of the note on the far right there underneath the generation. Just kind of interesting how we are a global economy, and our parts and pieces are coming from South Korea, they're coming from Germany, they're coming from all over the world. In the case of our GSUs for Cass County, or again, the generation step-up transformers, a little bit of a backup, a little bit of congestion in the Panama Canal due to the conflicts at the Strait of Hormuz. And so just an interesting slowdown in one part of the world can cause a little bit of a backup in another part. And so that is something that we're keeping an eye on. You're really slipping a GSU at a critical stage of a project could be a pretty significant issue. Again, luckily, OPPD is a little bit ahead of the curve with how early we're getting these assets delivered to the site. So the 2 or 3 month delay we're going to see just in shipping isn't going to impact the projects at all, but something that we're continuing to monitor. Overall, just the general supply chain challenges, Javier talked about it. I reiterated it. Materials and labor type resources are going to continue to be a problem for us long-term across the next 5 to 10 years of expansion, as every other utility is doing exactly what we're doing right now. So, and if we want to jump to the last slide for me. So it's been right at a year that the board approved our engineering certification for us to be allowed to go out and negotiate board resolution 6709. Overall, since this engineer cert has been approved, our primary in our key activity is really the build out of our transmission and substation contract alliance program. Again, trying to stay ahead of the tight labor market and making sure that we have the types of resources we need to get our projects complete on the timelines that our customers need. And so TASCA is in full swing, and some of the statistics you see at the bottom are the events associated with TASCA. So we have 3 upcoming RFPs. We have 2 contracts in motion. We have 1 direct award. And really what that means is if there is a reason to optimize and kind of single source one of the suppliers that we have in our alliance contract, being able to implement that to ensure that we're meeting our project schedules or eliminating some project risk in some way. Effectively using that, we've got about 3.6 million in overall contracts through this strategic alliance. And that isn't just around the TASCA, the strategic alliance. It's about other risk mitigation. This engineer cert's allowed us to source additional transmission wire when we started to see some material congestion. We've seen it for some distribution manholes and some other things that are pretty critical to the sequencing of our work. Being able to leverage this in an emergent situation rather than going through traditional sealed bid has been a great benefit to us on these projects and a great risk mitigation tool. That kind of concludes my report. If there's any other questions for me. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you, Danny.
It's afternoon already. I was about to say good morning, but it is into the afternoon now. So good afternoon, all. Good to see everyone. Joe Lang, Director of Generation Strategy and Origination. I just have a couple updates on some renewable projects that are active. Just as a brief reminder on Pierce County Energy Center, it's located northwest of Norfolk, Nebraska, where we're at there. It's approximately, or is 420 megawatts and 170 megawatt battery storage, and the storage will be connected through a surplus interconnection agreement with SPP, and that helps us maximize the capacity of the facility and the interconnection so we can minimize the transmission upgrades that are necessary there. So great news. Last week on the item on firm transmission, we heard from SPP on the transmission service study, and we will be getting firm transmission service. The studies have indicated that no additional transmission upgrades will be necessary. So that's great. That's always one of those kind of crapshoots, if you will, that you get into where when you're into a study with lots of other requests and not always knowing of what those studies will yield. The agreements on this facility, as noted, include OPPD, Google, and NextEra. So it's kind of a multi-party engagement in that regard, and NextEra is constructing it, and they will continue to own the asset for the benefits of the construction schedule. Everything's looking good there. There's the percentages provided. Everything is on schedule currently. There are some risks, as always, that continue to pop up, so we keep a close eye on that, but everything is currently on track to be in early 27. So we'll stay optimistic there, but watching it closely.
Hey, Joe, even though the project is, of course, it's OPPD, Google, and NextEra, and that's the way we've been talking about this project, and that's exactly what the project is. But I would be remiss if I didn't give a public thank you to the Nebraska Public Power District, which is the local transmission owner. It's in their service territory, and they're helping with construction and modifications of the substation that this facility will interconnect to. They've been good partners with NextEra, who's a developer, and working on that piece. So I just want to call that out, that partnership, and that happens across the footprint. So
good point. NPPD has a notable amount of work that's associated here from a substation and transmission standpoint. So very good call out. Next slide. On K Junction Solar, we've continued our efforts with the York County Board to advocate for reasonable solar regulations. On April 28th, the board did vote to formalize half-mile setbacks from neighboring property lines with dwellings. So that makes it certainly very onerous if you will, to on the constructability of a economic solar facility. So we're still working there some, certainly. As a result of that, we did allow our generation interconnection agreement to expire. There are various elements in the generation interconnection agreement that have schedules for constructing the interconnection substation. And those schedules were just very challenging to adhere to, given the current vote there. So we did allow that to expire. And we're continuing to work to see what we can do to certainly advance activities with partners and what have you. And we're certainly hopeful that we'll have some announcements there soon, and potentially some announcements on other additional renewable energy. That's it for me. Absent questions. Okay, thanks everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Mark Pohl, Programs and Planning Manager for Utility Operations. One of my responsibilities is program oversight for all things related to Omaha Station transition and Resolution 6744. While there's not a lot of new information to report, we wanted to make sure to provide routine updates to the board to keep the board informed about where we are relative to the North Omaha Station transition. I'll call a quick reminder that back at the end of 2025, OPPD received the generation interconnection agreements that were outlined in Board Resolution 6518. These were specifically for Turtle Creek Station and Standing Bear Lake Station. Following that, OPPD initiated the SPP transmission tariff study in January of this year, requesting the retirement and refueling of units at North Omaha Station. This is an SPP-led study. It informs whether or not there are any transmission investments that are needed before we can proceed with the retirement and refueling of the North Omaha Station. We anticipate SPP will be complete with this study by the end of this year. In parallel to this, the district's 2026 Integrated System Plan, or ISP, is considering the refueling and retirement of North Omaha Station as a base assumption. The ISP will also consider SPP study requirements to prioritize any necessary system investments to enable the refuel and retirement to take place. That is all outlined in Board Resolution 6744, just as a reminder for you all. We anticipate that study also being complete by the end of the year. We will continue to provide the board updates as both of these studies progress. I'll pause here and open the floor to any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, with that, we're on to Ms. Wheeler.
Yes, we have Vicki Lee here. She's a senior benefits specialist, and so I'd like to introduce her and she'll walk us through the details of the annual health plan report.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Joni said, my name is Vicki Lee, and I am the senior benefits specialist. So similar to last year, I'm going to go through what our annual health plan report looks like for 2025. So if you can scroll down or go to the next page, perfect. So at OPPD, we maintain a health plan for not only our employees, but also retirees, survivors, and then eligible dependents. So the district's health plan is a self-funded administrative services only health plan, which includes medical insurance, prescription drug coverage, dental insurance, and then related health programs. So we are subject to the Political Subdivision Self-Funding Benefits Act, which requires an annual report on our health plan and then also on 2 required reserves that we have. So this report, as you can see, is broken up into 2 sections. So the first section displays our expenses and then reduction of expenses related to our self-funded health plan. And the second section summarizes the activity of those 2 required reserves that we have. So the first part that I'll go through is our expenses. So our medical, dental, and prescription gross claims were just over $44 million. So as you can see, it's a slight increase over what it was for 2024. So this claim cost is actually for active full-time and eligible part-time employees who are enrolled in our health plan. So the increase that we saw, which was about $4 million, part of it's attributed to we did have more high cost claimants in 2025 than what we did have in 2024. Our dental claims also increased slightly over 2024. Part of that's still the result of the benefit changes we made in 2023 that were the result of negotiations that we did with our unions in 2022. Our pharmacy spend, however, did go down in 2025. In large part, that is due to the pharmacy benefit manager change that we made for 2025. So it resulted in lower pharmacy spend. We're now getting passed through. So we're getting full rebates. We're also getting actual drug costs with our prescription drugs. So we did see a reduction with our pharmacy spend. So the next item with under expenses is our other post-employee benefits or our OPEB trust. So our OPEB trust is used to pay for current and future claim expenses for eligible retirees, survivor of retirees, and employees that are on long-term disability. So medical claims, medical claim administration fees, life insurance premiums, and then health savings account funding for those eligible members that are OPEB members go into the OPEB trust or paid through the OPEB trust. So there is an actuarial analysis that is done annually on January 1st to determine the annual required contribution that is needed for the new year. The amount of the annual required contribution funding was nearly the same in 2025 as what it was in 2024. So the last item under expenses is our fees and our reserve adjustments. So I'm going to go through our fees and then I'm going to jump down to our reserves because part of that cost is included in the fees. So
before you go there, if I may, can you just briefly explain a little bit of that middle line, other post-employment benefits? We typically get a report from finance on the fund itself. Actuarially, how are we funding that fund? But a big portion of this is we are paying benefits.
Yes.
Medical benefits. We're paying for medical expenses to retirees, to a big portion of our retiree population. I think it's important for us to park on that topic just for a minute. To talk about that with the board and with the public. This is how we are also taking care of that retiree population and helping offset what otherwise would be their costs for medical treatment.
Correct. So eligible retirees that are able to retire from OPPD, we do continue to provide health insurance coverage to them if they elect it. So then we also continue to provide life insurance benefits to them as well. So those fees and that cost related to that, as well as the claim costs, still funnel through our plan. And that's what comes out of that trust, is that OPEB trust that we pay for those expenses. And then survivors of retirees. So if we have a retiree that passes away, their surviving dependents are eligible to continue with their health insurance. Those costs also are part of the OPEB, as well as our employees that are on long-term disability as well. So that's all part of that OPEB trust.
Thank you for that. And it is not an insignificant contribution. And I think it's important to hear that we're blessed to have a great relationship with our retiree groups. And I think it's important to point this out. So
correct. Absolutely. So thank you for that. So under that last item under our fees, which is the fees and reserve adjustments, so that's $3.75 million in 2025. So as you can see, this was a decrease of about $500,000 from 2024. So there's three areas that consist or that make up the fees. So our health savings account funding to our employees that are enrolled, or our full-time employees that are enrolled in our high deductible health plan, that's also part of the fees. Our medical and dental administration fees are also part of this expense too, as well as our stop loss coverage fees. So I'm going to briefly talk about the stop loss coverage that we have, because we do have two different stop loss coverages. So as a political subdivision of the state of Nebraska, we're required to have aggregate stop loss coverage. So what aggregate stop loss coverage will do is it will reimburse the plan if total claim expenses exceed 120% of projected claim costs in a calendar year. So then we also have individual stop loss coverage, which we added in 2011 due to the Affordable Care Act, removing lifetime maximums on medical plans. So we added individual stop loss coverage. And what this coverage will do is it will reimburse the plan for claim payments that exceed $400,000 per individual in a calendar year. So part of also, as you can see, our decrease of from 2024 to 2025 is we did go through an RFP process with our stop loss carrier. So we were able to get a decrease on our individual stop loss fees and then a slight increase on the aggregate fees that we paid. Typical or most employers were seeing 20 to 25% premium increases, but we were able to see a decrease on the individual side and just a slight increase on the aggregate side. So therefore our fees that we paid for stop loss in 2025 was less than 2024. So I'm going to jump down to that bottom section where we talk about the reserves or our two different reserves, because part one of the reserves, the fees or the activity is included in that fee and reserve adjustment line. So at OPPD, we're required to have those two reserves or those two accounts. So as part of the Political Subdivision Self-Funded Act, we maintain two of these funds or two required reserves. So the funding for these reserves does vary every year. So an actuarial study and analysis is completed annually for both reserves to determine the amount that is needed. So the first reserve that we have is the incurred but not presented reserve. So this reserve accounts for timing delays in claim filing and processing. And then the second reserve is the monthly claims and expense reserve. So this reserve ensures that we have funds available to administer the health plan in any ensuing month. So the actuarial projection estimates the cost that we need for 1 month's expenses. So only the adjustments to the incurred but not presented reserve are recorded as an expense, since a liability does exist. And as you can see, we actually had a reduction in 2025 with this activity for the incurred but not presented. So that's also part of the reason why our fees and reserve adjustment line for 2025 is less than what it was in 2024. So going back up to the top section, I'll now go through what the reduction of expenses look like in 2025. So this includes employee premiums, contributions that they pay for both medical, prescription, dental, and then also premiums that we collect for individuals that elect continuation of coverage or COBRA. So employee medical premiums for 2025 did increase by 9.5%, and then dental increased by 8%. So that's why you see that increase from 2024 to 2025. The prescription drug rebates are also a reduction in expenses as well. So rebates are variable because they are related to medications that are filled by enrolled members. So it does vary from year to year. But as you can see, we received significantly more in rebates in 2025 than what we did in 2024. So the rebates were about 77% higher, or $2.7 million more. A lot of this was due to the pharmacy benefit manager change that we did in 2025. So not only are we receiving the quarterly rebates sooner with our new pharmacy benefit manager, but we also received an additional rebate with our prior pharmacy benefit manager. So we received 5 quarterly payments in 2025, where typically we receive 4 quarterly payments. So that's also part of the reason why we had a larger rebate or a prescription rebate, but a lot of it's also attributed to that pharmacy benefit manager change that we did in 2025. So another reduction is our stop loss reimbursement. So as I talked about before, we've got that individual stop loss coverage. So if we do have any individuals that have claim costs exceeding $400,000, we do get reimbursements from our stop loss carrier. So as I mentioned earlier, we did have more high-cost claimants in 2025 over 2024. So that's why we did receive more money in that area in 2025. So another smaller line item is miscellaneous, and that's generally going to be related to just miscellaneous claim refunds that we receive from our third-party administrator, UMR, and then our prior pharmacy benefit manager, we also had an audit done as well. So we received some money back from that audit. So overall, so that explains our health plan report. So overall, our net expense decreased by $600,000 over 2024. So a lot of it was due to premiums paid by employees, higher prescription drug rebates, higher stop loss reimbursements that we received. But for the most part, we stayed fairly flat for 2024. So the one last item that I really want to talk about and really go through as well is to talk about what our goals are. So every year we have goals. So not only do we want to have a healthy workforce, but we also want to do all that we can to mitigate costs. So it's really important to us to have a robust and full wellness program, as well as cost containment programs within our health plan and health management programs as well that will not only support our members that have health issues, but also support a healthy workforce while also mitigating those costs. So there's a number of things that we do every year. We have annual health screenings and flu shot administration that we do for our employees every year. We also do annual campaigns stressing the need for skin cancer screenings. We're also doing a lot more in the space of year-round ongoing campaigns, highlighting the importance of getting those regular screenings, having those regular routine visits with your doctor, catching things early. And then we also, with the weight management space, we have various programs. We have one that's very robust, a 52-week-long program that's through Real Appeal with our third-party administrator, UMR, all the way down to if you want self-guided through our wellness portal or wellness program. So we have varying levels of weight management programs that employees can also participate in. We have a smoking cessation program. Another area that's very important to us is also in the mental health space. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we did roll out training again this year to our employees. We have a number of resources, not only through our third-party administrator, UMR, but also through our wellness vendor. We have an EAP vendor where we had increased our visits available for our members. We have Teledoc, a virtual platform through UMR that not only does general conditions in dermatology, but also allows for mental health counseling that's available to employees. So there's different avenues that employees can access if they need that support. And then UMR also has a number of care conditions programs that are going to support individuals that have health needs, diabetes, heart issue, asthma, COPD, whatever it might be, cancers. So they're here to support as well. And then a number of our vendors, UMR, our EAP vendor, our wellness program has a number of articles and resources that can support individuals in their health journey. So some things that we are looking at, we continue to look at musculoskeletal programs because that is a high cost area for us. We want to do all we can to support individuals in that space. And in 2027, we're looking to add some cardiometabolic programs to not only support individuals that are high risk, but also looking down the road and going on to support moderate risk and then eventually rolling it out to all employees. That will not only support them, but also mitigate costs as well. So and then annually, we're always looking at all of our programs. We want to make sure that they're providing value to our members, they're supporting our members, and that they're also mitigating costs, and our fees, we can keep them as low as possible. So that pretty much ends my report. So if anybody's got any additional questions, let me know.
I'll make a statement. I mean, you talked about a lot of the benefits, and this team does a fantastic job of coming to the centers and to the power plants and making sure folks really know what's available to them. Lots of kudos in that space because I learn something new just about every time I go that I didn't realize we had. So it's a great offering, and they do a fantastic job.
Thank you for that, Troy. Yeah, we're really excited about these programs we're going to be rolling out in 2027. I think they'll be really valuable for employees. So I thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I think the last is we have a couple of labor contracts up, and we have Brian Kramer, our senior director over the construction side of the business, and a few months ago, we transitioned the management of outside labor to his group to more closely align with the work that our own folks. It's been a good thing, and Brian has a tie on today, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, me too.
He doesn't know me outside of work. I wear a tie every other place. Now, thanks. So I have two RPs today to bring to you guys. These are both pretty identical to each other. And if you remember last month, I brought another RFP. It was for underground construction resources. And that one was specifically for new developments, commercial and residential. These two here are around our metro cable replacements and our north rural cable replacement. So a little similarities. I'll describe them here together, and then I'll get into some details about each of them. But both of these had the bids that were based on what we thought a normal amount of work would be for the year. So how many units we expected, they were bidding on that. The other thing is it's not a guaranteed price every year. As the volume of work goes up and down for us, then we'll be paying that vendor more for that kind of work. This is a 3-year contract that's initially there, and then we've got some proposals that we can go 1 year at a time for 3 more years, so 6 in total if we get to that point. We did advertise for both of these in March. We went and opened the bids in April, and we're hoping to award here in May. And then effectiveness of this contract, if it's approved, starts in July 1st. So that'll be the running period there. For specifically 6240, the North Rural Cable replacements, we received 3 bids, and we would normally expect about 3 to 5 in today's market. I think I explained that last time. Is we're really pretty content with 3. Labor's getting harder to find in all areas for us, so we were happy with the 3. After review with Steve's team, one was found to be legally non-responsive, so we erased that one out of the equation. And looking at the bids, the lowest and best was Nielsen Construction. They are the incumbent. They had the bid at $2,194,389. So based on the second one, that's in the metro area. Very similar as I spoke to there. We did have 3 proposals there. We did seek some clarification in some of the RFPs that came back. And in the process of that, again, Steve's team helped us recommend that 2 of the 3 bids were not legally responsive. So we were left with 1 bid. Still, in our opinion, one of the better bids that we got. It's Nielsen Construction again at $7,723,903. So we would recommend Nielsen for both of these contracts.
And we've worked with them before?
Yeah, they are the incumbent. They've done underground construction services in all 3 areas for about 12 years now. Yep.
Are you satisfied with their safety record?
They had an incident this year. Nielsen has an incident on record this year that was significant. We've ramped up our interface with Gina's help, with that contractor. This is a smaller contractor, a local contractor, so they don't come in like Danny's team at Kiewit with anything that's as equal to OPPD. But they have had really strong performance over 12 years. So I would say we don't rate anybody's performance on one incident, but it does raise our awareness that Gina and I can partner and help that team become, more successful, or at least as successful as they can be. So yeah, we are happy.
And I'll make a comment here. Well, we don't employ their employees, their people, and they're working on our projects. And to me, that's the most important thing. So thank you for engaging.
Yeah,
Thank you, Tina, for engaging on this.
My supervisor is Blaine Peterson, and he speaks to it. He speaks to it very passionately because he knows the individuals, he knows the owners. He's worked for them, with them for 12 years. He feels as passionate about their safety as he does his own employee safety. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more.
Covered both.
What's that?
Both went back to back.
No, I meant, for this slide here. So for any consent action items, are there any directors that want them pulled to board discussion action? Nope. Okay, with that, then we have, I guess we got an opportunity for public comment on items of district business. We'll do that before we adjourn. We'll take comments in the room first and then via WebEx. Any in-person comments?
No in-person.
Seeing none. For WebEx attendees, if you wish to make a comment, please send the meeting host a message using the chat feature or utilizing the hand raise feature. Detailed instructions can be found on the OPPD website at the link shown on the screen. When I call on a member of the public to speak, please affirm that we can hear you before commencing with your comments. Please state your name, address, and the name of any organization or person you represent. Each individual will be allotted 3 minutes per matter pending. To assist you, we'll use the timer on the screen and signal you when 30 seconds remain, as well as when time is up. If you have written materials, please email them to corporatesecretary@oppd.com and they'll be received on our behalf. For all attendees, please direct your comments to me. I'll either respond to you directly or defer response to another board member or officer of the district. The board values and welcomes civil, respectful, clear, and concise communication from the public. During public comments, speakers should refrain from repetitious, profane, or irrelevant comments. Speakers shall refrain from polling the board as such vote is not on the agenda and prohibited by law. Do any members of the public join via WebEx have comments on items of district business? Please send a chat to the meeting host or use the hand raise feature in WebEx. Telephone users can press *3 to raise their hand.
David Corbin.
All right, sir, if you can hear me, please go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good. Because that was my testimony last time. Can you hear me? First of all, I appreciated the ISP meeting on May 14th. It was interesting to see that there was a lot of interest in environmental issues. And so my question would be, what happens to what feedback do we get and how do we know how you take into account what happens in those meetings? Be interesting to hear that in the future. Regarding early on in today's meeting, you talked about engagement with the Douglas County Health Department, and you talked about going to engage with other officials, elected officials and otherwise regarding 6744. It will also be good to hear and to get reports on how those meetings went and what the plans will be. And then finally, as a emeritus professor of health education and public health, I want to commend you on your attention to details in your health insurance and your wellness programs. Thank you.
Can I comment?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you. And so the question about the ISP, I think just to be very clear, our intention is we're gathering information, we're requesting, as Brad Underwood mentioned earlier, it's the input stage of the process. And my expectation would be to, as we've done in the past, be very transparent and report back all the input that we received. And when we have the next interaction with the public, to walk through how that input affected the modeling, what input was included, what input was not, and the reasons why not. So that's hopefully that answers that question, but it will be shared at the next opportunity.
Thank you. Aaron, are there any other comments?
No other comment.
All right, without any other comments, thanks for everybody's time today, and the meeting's adjourned at 12:41 p.m.